And are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning.
All right, you may continue your direct examination.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, we were talking about that time when you were in Dr. Oziel's office on October 31st, 1989, after he had called your brother Lyle to come over. Okay?
Yes.
Now, you told us yesterday that Dr. Oziel asked you why this had happened. Is that right?
Yes.
And you told him you didn't know why?
Yes.
Did he then ask you any other questions about how it came about or what got it started or anything like that?
Yes, he asked what brought it up or when it came up, or I don't remember the exact words that he used.
Okay, and what did you tell him in response to that?
I told him that week that there were conversations between Lyle and I.
And what were you specifically, well, let me ask you this, were you telling him the truth of what was said in those conversations between yourself and your brother?
No, I was telling him part of the conversation, part not. The part that I didn't want to tell him, I didn't tell him.
And what part of the conversations that you had had with your brother, what subjects did you tell him about?
Just about my mother and my father and what the family was like.
And with respect to the actual conversations that you had with Lyle, on Friday, before your parents were killed, when you were driving south, was there any conversation between yourself and your brother about the family?
Yeah, I was telling him mostly about the Tuesday and Friday conversation. Those are the ones I was thinking of when I was talking to him.
Okay. My first question, though, is were there conversations, real, truthful conversations between you and Lyle on Tuesday and on Friday when you were driving to San Diego about your family?
Yes.
Okay. And was it parts of those conversations that you were telling Dr. Oziel?
Sustained.
What were you and Lyle, what was the subject matter that you and Lyle were talking about on Friday concerning your parents?
Just about how different things were and how strange and scary things were inside the family because of all the chaos. And
were you tying that in any way to your parents' personalities or how they had treated you or anything like that?
Yes.
Sustained. Answer is stricken.
What was the thrust of your conversation with Lyle about how strange and how different things were in the family?
I told him about more details about what happened with my dad at Kalamazoo. We talked about the fact that Mom wasn't taking her medication anymore and how scary a person she had become because of all the threats that she had made over the course of when we lived in Beverly Hills and California, and just about how just when and why, or what we were thinking about when the family no longer seemed to be a family. We talked about the affairs that Dad had and the effects that it had on Mom and how Mom changed.
Okay. So do you recall telling Dr. Oziel some part or parts from that conversation?
Yes, I did.
Now, with respect to that week before your parents were killed, did you do you believe you said anything to Dr. Oziel about what kind of emotional condition you were in that week?
I'm sure I did. I'm sure I told him that I was a mess and that I was falling apart. I probably did.
Okay.
At what time were you referring to when in the session?
Well, at any time during the session of October 31st, did you tell him, well, strike that. You said you told him that after he asked you, you told him that there were conversations that week.
Yes.
Okay. So, do you know, was it before that or after you told him about the conversations that week that you mentioned anything about your emotional condition?
Probably after.
Now, after you told Dr. Oziel something about these conversations you had had with your brother, did he start talking to you?
Yes.
And can you characterize for us what kind of talk was he doing?
The talk that he did in that session, he would just tell me what he was thinking and tell me why he was thinking that and tell me, in essence, what I was thinking, because I wasn't telling him what I was thinking. I was saying, I don't know. At this point, I was more thinking about Lyle, and so I wasn't talking very much. And so he was saying that I didn't really understand, and that was one of his bigger things.
What was one of his big things?
That I didn't understand, and that I didn't really know, and that it was too confusing, and it was too much, and I was in such a state that I didn't really understand why this happened or what. So he was telling me from what he knew about my parents, from what he knew what he thought was going on.
Okay. When he says he told you what you were thinking when? While you're in his office or some other time?
No, that last week.
Was he right?
No.
Did you tell him he wasn't right?
No, I really wasn't concerned about that at the moment.
Well, did you intend to tell him what had really happened?
No. I hadn't intended to tell him anything. I realized that I shouldn't have when I was there with him.
All right. Now, do you recall your brother arriving?
Yes.
Now, you heard your brother testify to what the interaction was between himself and Dr. Oziel after he arrived. Did you not?
Yes.
Do you have a memory any different than your brother's on that point?
No, it was basically that.
And did you ever hear your brother threaten Dr. Oziel?
No, he didn't threaten Dr. Oziel. He just was pretty nervous in the session. Lyle, he was angry and he was nervous and he just didn't want to be there.
And did Dr. Oziel try to get Lyle to talk about the killing of your parents?
Yes.
And did Lyle do that?
No, Lyle told him many times, I don't want to be here. I don't want to know what Erik said. I just want to talk to Erik. That's what he was saying.
Now, how did you react to your brother being upset and angry?
I was reacting to different things. I was reacting to Dr. Oziel saying, I think I'm being threatened, or you're acting menacing toward me, or something like that he was saying. And Lyle just saying, I can't believe that you went to Dr. Oziel and not me. And I just was feeling really guilty about doing that, and about the whole situation and how I really screwed up by even going to Dr. Oziel. And so I just ran out of the room crying.
So you were upset?
Yes.
And when you ran out of the room crying, was that the last participation you had in any kind of conversations with Dr. Oziel that night?
Yes.
And at the up until the point where you had run out of the room, from the time that Dr. Oziel asked you, what happened with respect to killing your parents, until that point when you ran out of the room, did he ever get back to the fact that you wanted to kill yourself and were depressed?
No, I tried to at one point, but he wanted to know the details of what happened, and he wasn't concerned about that other stuff.
And when you left the room, were you feeling better than when you had first gotten
I was
there?
feeling really miserable. I was feeling like I had just made things a whole lot worse, and regretting that I had gone there, and just because of different reasons.
Okay. Now, after this session, did you have a conversation with your brother?
Yes.
And what was the basic subject matter of that conversation with your brother?
What I had told Dr. Oziel and what we were going to do about going back to see Dr. Oziel, if we were or we weren't, if we were, what we were going to do.
Had you told Dr. Oziel before you left the street? Had you told Dr. Oziel out of the street that you would be coming back?
Yes.
Do you remember whether or not you actually made an arrangement for a particular date to come back?
I think we did. I thought that we had arranged to go back on the Thursday. It was the day that he had off or something like that, but I'm not sure if we had arranged the exact time.
And what was it that you and your brother decided in that conversation about whether you should go back to see Dr. Oziel, and what, if anything, you should talk about?
Well, a lot of things were talked back and forth between Lyle and I. We eventually decided we had to go back and see him because Lyle and I both felt that he very well could go to the police and or that we might get arrested that night or the next day. We didn't know, so we figured we'd go back and see him.
And what was your resolve about what you were going to talk to him about?
Just about what was inside the family, since I was really feeling terrible, and I really was feeling very guilty about that I had done this to Lyle, and so Lyle wanted me to, if we were going to go back, to at least be able to talk about some of the things I was feeling inside the family. So we decided that we could do that and sort of avoid the other subject.
Well, were you going to avoid it, or was there any decision made about other subjects, such as your molestation or
No.
what
We were
led
not
to-
going to talk about that. Definitely not going to talk about that.
And what were the reasons why you resolved not to talk about that?
Partly because I did not want to talk about that, and I was not going to talk about that, and Lyle was pretty adamant about it as well. And I had brought up to Lyle that, I'm sorry that I created such a mess, that Dr. Oziel now is afraid, that I told him maybe I should have told him and the truth, and I didn't know. And Lyle was really reassuring that I did fine, I did the right thing, not telling him, and that it definitely shouldn't. And so I felt strong about that.
Let me ask you this. You've testified you felt guilty about killing your parents.
Yes.
Okay. What did you think of your parents at that point?
I didn't hear the
What
question.
did you think of your parents at that point by October 31st?
I thought they were these great people that I had killed, and I didn't understand now very much.
And did you have any feelings about talking about them in a negative way?
I didn't want to talk about them in a negative way. I loved them more than I had ever loved them in my life at that point because of how sad I felt it. And I just wanted to talk about the good things, even though it made me feel worse.
Excuse me?
I said, even though it made me feel worse, I just needed to.
Now, you heard Dr. Oziel testify about all these negative things about domination and control and about your father that he says was said in both sessions.
Yes.
Who was saying those things?
Dr. Oziel.
Now, some of those things were true, weren't they? I mean, your father was like that.
Yeah, and that's what Dr. Oziel's understanding was, that my dad was this very controlling, he used the word dominating, or domineering a lot. That's from his context with my dad, that's what he thought my dad was, and so that's...
And when he said those things, did you agree with him that that is what your dad was?
Yes.
Now, in your mind, was that everything your dad was, or was he also other things?
Actually, overall.
My dad was a whole lot of different things.
Dr. Oziel testified that you discussed with him writing this book about your father, this very favorable book.
Yes, I told him that I wanted to write a book talking about how great he was.
And did you at that time believe your father was great?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Oziel also talked about the fact that your mother was miserable and your mother was suicidal and your mother couldn't live without your father. Were these things that you believed?
These were some of the things. Dr. Oziel didn't have a good understanding of my mother. I guess he didn't have as much contact with my mother, or my mother was always a very private person, so I guess she didn't open up to him. I don't know what it is, but he had a certain feeling about both my mom and my dad, and they were off in many respects, but that's what he believed. Certainly she was miserable and she was suicidal, but he didn't understand her.
And when he talked about your mother in those terms, did you disagree with him?
No.
Now, can you tell us, Mr. Menendez, concerning the session of November 2nd, okay? Could you characterize, basically, what it was you were trying to convey and your brother was trying to convey in that session, and what it was Dr. Oziel was doing?
Well,
Objection as to what his brother was trying to do.
Sustained.
Well, Your Honor,
Objection sustained.
what,
Wait a second. She's going to have to ask another question.
yeah, I'm going to rephrase the question. Could you characterize what you and your brother were conveying and what Dr. Oziel was conveying? Do you understand the question?
Yes.
Okay.
I was trying to talk about different things. I was trying to get back to how depressed I was, and I wanted to know what I should do, just in case I ever got so depressed that and
Did he address that when you brought that up? Did he deal with it, Dr. Oziel? Did he pick
no,
up
he
on
said
it?
he'd deal with it later, and he never got back to it. But we were talking about what Mom and Dad were like. That's what we decided to do, and that's what I felt like doing. And Dr. Oziel was talking about that, and he was talking about what we felt, and he was saying, no, you really don't understand. And I was saying, no, I don't understand. He says, I know I've got to do a lot of therapy with you, or a lot of hypnosis, he was saying, to get out your feelings, and he was really trying to get out why this all happened. And Lyle kept saying, I don't want to talk about why, I don't know why, and trying to stay away from it until Dr. Oziel would go away from it and then come back to it.
Okay, and did he have theories?
Yes.
Overruled.
And were you presented with them?
Yes.
Now, let me ask you something. Do you recall Dr. Oziel testifying that you and your brother both commented frequently throughout the session on how perfect the appearance of your family was to the outside world?
Yeah, he testified to that.
And what's the significance of that statement to you?
That's basically what we talked about how everyone thought my family was so wonderful, and really what a shambles it was. And especially the marriage between my mom and my dad.
And he testified to that also, that that was one of the examples of how perfect it appeared and how bad it really was?
He didn't testify to that very much, but he did testify to that.
Was that very much, this notion of how perfect the family was in appearance and how false that was that very much what the conversation was about?
That was what almost all the conversation was about.
Now, did you sense, Mr. Menendez, during this session of November 2nd, that Dr. Oziel, in his theories, had come to certain conclusions about what had brought about the killing of your parents that were wrong?
Objection, legal.
Sustained.
Did you sense during this session that Dr. Oziel had formulated any conclusions?
I didn't sense it. He told us what... He wasn't saying so much, I think this. He was saying, this is what happened, you don't really understand, and eventually I'll be able to explain it to you and you'll be able to understand.
All right. So you knew what his conclusions were?
Yes.
Objection, legal.
Sustained.
Did you know what his conclusions were from things that he said?
Yes.
Did you set him straight?
No.
Now, on either October 31st or November 2nd, did either you or your brother ever tell Dr. Oziel that you had formulated a plan to kill your parents?
No.
Did you ever tell him you formulated the perfect plan to kill your parents?
No.
On October 31st or November 2nd, did any of you, yourself, your brother, or Dr. Oziel, ever mention that your mother was probably or was in fact killed because she was a witness?
No.
When was the first you ever learned that Dr. Oziel was prepared to say that?
When I read his notes after I was arrested. And I didn't know he was prepared to say that then, though. I didn't know he was prepared to say that until I heard him testify.
So even after you read the notes, you didn't believe he'd really say
I read a lot of things.
Sustained.
All right, but the fact is, you didn't even know that
Objection sustained to the form of the question.
before I get out.
Well, you start out in the way that you knew what the answer would be.
Okay,
Let's ask a different way.
all right. You didn't hear that word witness used in the session?
In the session, definitely not.
Did you hear any talk about there was no way to kill your father unless you killed your mother?
No.
Mr. Menendez, in your family life, when you were living in Beverly Hills, was your family involved with another house? Did you have another house?
We were building the Calabasas house.
And who in your family was in charge of supervising the redoing and the remodeling of that house?
My dad gave that project to my mom.
So who was in charge of doing it?
My mom.
And did it take up much of her time?
Took up a fair amount of her time.
And who in your family, as between your mother and father, was in charge of paying all the bills and tracking the family finances? And
My mom.
And who was in charge of making sure that the house ran, that there were groceries, that there were, all the things?
My mom.
And who was in charge, in fact, of scheduling tennis tournaments and tennis matches and all that sports stuff for yourself and your brother?
My mom.
And were there times that when you and your brother would be alone at the house with your father?
Yes.
Was that rare or infrequent?
Almost every weekend.
And on the weekends, what would your mother be doing during the day?
She'd either go over to the Calabasas house to check out things, or she'd run errands, or do whatever.
And as between your parents, which one of them on the weekends tended to get up earlier?
My mom. She got up early most of the time, and sometimes was out of the house by 8.
And what was your father's custom and habit with respect to the time he would get up on weekends?
He got up late.
Usually what time?
10, 11 o'clock. Every once in a while he slept till 12.
And when you and your brother would be home alone with your father, what would you guys be doing?
Usually playing tennis.
And what would your father do while you and your brother were playing tennis?
He was usually on the tennis court.
Now, can you, do you remember generally the sequence of the conversation on November 2nd? In other words, what was the start of the conversation and where did it go to from there?
It started with, I don't remember everything that happened in the conversation, but it started with him talking about the fact that he had these tapes in safety deposit boxes, and how he just wanted to let us know that, and that made us pretty nervous at that point.
Okay. And was there any discussion of confidentiality?
Yes.
And how, and you heard Dr. Oziel give you a statement about confidentiality?
When?
You're asking about his testimony or at the time of
At the
this
time,
conversation?
on November 2nd. Do you
I
remember?
mean, on November 2nd, he did, yes.
Okay. And what was your sense, based on what he was saying and what had occurred between October 31st and now at November 2nd, about confidentiality?
Well, he was telling me that he could go to the police if he felt threatened, and he said he had felt threatened. And so I wasn't sure what was confidential and what wasn't.
Now, Mr. Menendez, did you hear Dr. Oziel testify that in the preceding year, you heard we took him through his appointment records?
Yes.
Okay. And did you hear him testify that he had obtained from you waivers of confidentiality?
Yes, he did.
And that the purpose, he testified the purpose of that was so he could report back to your parents?
Yes.
And during the preceding year when you knew Dr. Oziel, did you believe that what you were telling him was confidential?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Did you believe during the preceding year, having signed those waivers, did you believe that what you told him was confidential?
No, I knew they were either going to go to my father or my mother.
Apart from them, you thought it was confidential?
Yes.
Now, do you recall this statement that Dr. Oziel made about your Jeep in the November 2nd session? Do you recall at the session what he said about it?
Yes, somewhat. Not completely, but somewhat.
You heard your brother testify that Dr. Oziel said he was worried looking down, thought you guys in your Jeep were plotting and planning stuff?
Yeah, I don't think he said he was looking down, but what I remember about it was that Dr. Oziel said something like, I pictured you guys sitting and talking in the Jeep or something like that.
Okay. And how did you react to that?
I said, boy, I wonder if this guy really is scared. I found it difficult to believe that he was so scared because I'm the one that went to him in the first place. And I'm the one that went to him talking about the fact that I wanted to kill myself. I certainly didn't want to harm him in any way. And so I was still having trouble believing that he was so scared, but the way he was talking about this Jeep thing and the fact that he had tapes and safety deposit boxes, I was thinking maybe he was.
Okay. And did that notion of yours that maybe he was, did that have any influence over how you talked to him or what you talked about?
Yes.
And what influence did it have?
It made me want to calm him down. It made me want to agree with him and let him know that, everything was fine.
Okay. Now, you said that most of the conversation had to do with discussions about your family and what your parents were like. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what the last topics were that were discussed?
I remember some of them, yes.
Okay. And can you tell us what those topics were?
Some of them were about the financial state that our family was in.
And how did that come up?
That came up, I remember briefly it came up in the middle of the conversation. I know it came up in the 31st.
Okay, tell me first then, how did it come up on the 31st?
When I was telling him about how depressed I was telling him that I was going to get all this money, and I was telling him that I just felt guilty about getting a lot of the money, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I felt like I had just killed my parents, and now I was getting all of their money, and I felt sort of guilty about that. I mean, I wanted to live, and I wanted to be able to live, but I felt guilty about getting all these things that they had worked for.
Okay. And how did it come up again on November 2nd?
It came up again when he brought it up, and he talked about the fact that we were going to get, I think it was $14 million, my Aunt Martha told me, or 15, something like that. It came up.
Let me stop you for a second. When your Aunt Martha was this is in that conversation that you've previously told us about with your Aunt Martha and your brother and yourself?
Yes.
And that's the conversation where you testified you're basically arguing with her that you're not going to get any money, that you've been disinherited?
It wasn't an argument, but that's how the conversation went.
Well, you're disputing what she thinks she knows.
Sustain.
Were you disagreeing with your Aunt Martha?
Yes.
And that number, $14, $15 million, did you know whether that was a gross number or a net number? Did you know the difference between gross and net?
I didn't really know the difference at that time.
So that was the numbers that stayed in your head?
Yes.
In fact, did you learn later that the estate wasn't worth anything like that?
Yes.
Objection sustained. The answer is true.
What did you learn later about the estate?
Just that it was worth, I think it was worth half that.
And that was was that before things were actually liquidated or sold, or after?
Yes, that was just what they thought it was going to be if they could sell things at this price, and that price was before the recession and so on.
Okay. So you were telling us how the financial issue was raised during the November 2nd session,
Yes,
okay? And who raised it?
Dr. Oziel.
And what did he say?
I don't quite remember what he said in the middle of the session, but at the end of the session, he was talking about the fact that we were going to get this money, and that we should use it wisely, and that he had a lot of great ideas and a lot of good investment tips and a lot of good investment plans that just needed money, and that it could make a lot of money. And he showed us. I remember he showed us his business cards that he had on his desk, and was
He had more than one business card?
Yes.
Do you remember why?
I don't remember the name of the company, but I know he had like 3 different business cards. And what was he saying? He was saying that he was just talking about how he had these different companies that could make a lot of money, and aside from that, he had these different investments that he thought could do great, and that I remember he was saying that he was real stressed or real nervous from what had occurred on the 31st, and just talking all about it.
He was talking about being stressed and nervous at the same time that he was talking about his company's investment tips?
Yeah, well, he was talking about it in the sense that he was going to have to cut down on his work now because of the stress that he was now under, and how he thought that it would be really preferable if Lyle and I could invest with him, and then everyone would be happy. That's essentially what he was saying.
How did you interpret that?
Well, I interpret that as he wanted to be a part of when the money was going to come in.
And how did you feel about that?
If it would calm him down and if it would relax him, then fine. I mean, he said that, if it was gonna make things okay, then that's fine. And I didn't have the sense anymore that he was so much afraid. I didn't have that sense at all, and it was strange. And I thought I was just confused, or I was getting it mixed up, but it was. If it was going to relax him, then fine. He was saying he was stressed, and if it was going to solve that, then fine. He could do what he wanted.
Okay. And at the end of the session, well, strike that. At any time towards the end of the session, did he ever get back to your depression or your guilt?
No.
Now, Mr. Menendez, on October 31st, when you were alone with Dr. Oziel, did the subject matter of your dealing with your guilt by turning yourself into the police ever come up?
No.
Did he ever tell you that anything about the way to deal with that guilt was to face the music, basically?
Actually, he was doing the opposite. He was telling us that where we had the guns was not a safe place, and he was actually helping us deal with the opposite.
When was that?
That was during those 2 sessions. I think
was
it
that-
was during the November 2nd, because I don't think it was during the November 31st. There wasn't
You mean
time.
October 30th?
I mean October 31st.
So on November 2nd, he's giving you suggestions about...
Yes.
Now, you didn't see that in his notes, did you?
No, that was not in his notes. He didn't have anything of those sort of conversations in his notes.
He didn't have any... There's nothing in his notes about giving you financial advice either, is there?
No, that's what I mean by I didn't know what he was going to testify to.
So I take it did not come up on the November 2nd either that the appropriate way to deal with this problem might be to turn yourself in.
No.
Sustain, the answer stricken.
Did the issue of turning yourselves in ever come up on November 2nd?
No.
And after the November 2nd session, Mr. Menendez, was your depression abated? Were you feeling less guilty? Were you less suicidal?
No, not at all.
You weren't any better?
No.
During the course of the November 2nd session, how are you feeling emotionally?
How was I feeling emotionally during the session?
How are you feeling?
I don't even remember. I was feeling a lot of different things. When I thought he was afraid at the beginning, I thought, boy, I can't believe how I screwed this all up and just made a mess of the whole situation. At the end, I was sort of a little suspicious. In the middle, I was crying most of the time.
Well, what was being discussed in the middle?
Mom and Dad's relationship, just basically what the family was, why it was really not this wonderful family that everyone thought.
Okay, let me go back with you now to October 31st of that session, to some of the details that you gave him. You've heard Dr. Oziel testify about what you supposedly told him concerning the sequence of events after the shooting.
I heard Dr. Oziel testify to that? Yes.
All right. Did he testify accurately with respect to what you told him?
No.
And how was he inaccurate?
He left out some things. He got it all jumbled up and mixed up.
Okay. What specifically did he leave out?
He left out that we went to the theater.
The movie theater?
Yeah, he didn't say we went to the theater anytime that night, and I'm sure he left out. I don't really remember. I haven't seen the notes.
Okay, but he didn't testify here in court that you told him that you went to the movies at some point after.
No.
Can you approach the show?
Yes. Okay,
I guess.
we'll find out.
Right. All right, Mr. Menendez, I was talking to you, I was asking you about the conversation that you had with Dr. Oziel before your brother arrived on October 31st, wherein you were giving him some details about the night of your parents' death, okay? You focused on where we are?
Yes.
All right. Did you ever tell Dr. Oziel, in describing how the shooting occurred, that you surprised your parents?
I doubt it. I don't know.
You doubt it?
I may have.
Well, why would you have said
I said we ran in on him, so I don't.
But the question is, do you believe you used the word surprise?
No, it's not the kind of word I would use in that situation, so I don't think I did.
Okay. Did you know after your parents were killed who you had shot? Did you know who you had shot? I mean, apart from your parents, did you know if you shot your father, if you shot your mother?
No.
And did you ever tell Dr. Oziel any specifics about who shot whom?
No.
Did you mention to him, however, the fact that there was a reloading?
Yes.
Did you tell him that both guns were reloaded, or did you not tell him that?
No, I didn't tell him that.
Were both guns reloaded?
No.
Did you say anything to Dr. Oziel on the 31st about your father making a noise or a sound or something when you came into the room, after you got into the room?
Yes.
And what did you tell him that your father said or did?
I told him my father said no.
And how did you describe the tone or the implication of that no?
It was a very rough, demanding tone.
And were you already firing when you heard that?
Yes.
What did you think your father was trying to do?
I thought he was ordering us to stop firing.
Now, Now, did Dr. Oziel at any time after you talked to him about the details, I'll strike that, did Dr. Oziel during the November 2nd session bring those details up again?
No.
Did he ever ask you to verify that things that he had put in his notes were accurate?
No, he would not have done that.
He would not have done that on November 2nd?
No.
Why?
Objection calls for speculation.
Why did you say that?
Because then I'd know what he put in his notes, and I'd know that they weren't accurate. So he wouldn't have shown them to me.
Okay. But my point is, he told you that he had... First of all, when you were telling Dr. Oziel on October 31st the details of the crime, what was your demeanor?
I was crying.
And he wasn't taking notes.
No.
And you weren't taking notes.
No.
And there wasn't any tape recorder going, trying to get it down, was there?
No.
And on November 2nd, he didn't go over with you to see if he had heard you correctly, did he?
No.
Now, what was your attitude with respect to Dr. Oziel after the session of November 2nd? Was he someone you felt you could rely upon? Was he someone you felt you could trust? What?
No. I was really suspicious by the end because of all the statements that because he wasn't really talking about fear anymore. He was talking about money and his stress, and I was a little confused and a little suspicious and a little, I don't even know how to describe how I was feeling.
And you had gone to him originally for help with an emotional problem?
Yeah, I was extremely depressed, and I didn't like the fact that when I tried to bring that up, he'd always say, "We'll talk about it later." Either I didn't understand a lot of things.
Now, you heard, did you hear Dr. Oziel during the session of November 2nd talk about how helpful he could be to you and your brother?
Yes.
Did you put any credence in that? Did you believe that that was true?
No. At first I thought he might have been talking about in terms of my depression, and then I realized he wasn't, and I didn't think he could be helpful in any other way.
Were you concerned, Mr. Menendez, that at some point you might indeed be arrested for this and be put on trial?
I thought I eventually would be.
And was that something that had occurred to you between August 20th and November 2nd?
Yes.
Did you think as of November 2nd that Dr. Oziel would be a useful witness for you?
No.
Is there some reason why you could tell Dr. Oziel that you had killed your parents, but couldn't tell him the things that your father had done to you all those years?
Yes.
And why do you think that was?
It was because I just felt so guilty about the killing my parents, and I had tried to tell different people about that, but there was no way that I was going to talk about what happened between my dad and I. It was so close in time to when it happened. I just couldn't talk about it. I was much too ashamed to even deal with it.
Let me ask you this. Over the years, had you been tempted to tell people about the fact that your father was having sex with you?
Definitely not. No, never a temptation.
Was that something that you in fact, tried to do the opposite with?
Objection, moved to stay.
What did you want to do with that information, with those facts of what was going on between you and your father?
I wanted to keep it as secret as possible and bury it and throw it in the ocean and have it disappear, basically.
And do you know what prompted you to tell the one person you did tell, your cousin Andy?
Because that was because I was trying to understand. I was really beginning to really question what was happening between my dad and I never questioned it before. And I sort of wanted to find out from Andy if this had ever happened to him, if this was some sort of thing that happened to people, and it was normal, or was I strange? And
Did you tell your cousin Andy to get his help?
no.
Your Honor, I think that might conclude the joint testimony.
And how long will the examination before the one jury take?
About an hour.
All right, what we'll do then is take a recess, and as far as the...
Let me just have one moment to confirm.
Certainly. And what we'll do is have the blue jury return at 5 minutes to 11, give us about a 15-minute break, a little longer than that, and the gold jury come back at 1:30. And as to both juries, don't discuss this matter among yourselves or with anyone else. Don't form any final opinions about it. And we'll see the gold jury back here at 1:30 and the blue jury back at 5 minutes to 11, at which time we'll continue with the blue jury. And it has to do with apparently some issues that counsel want resolved prior to the testimony of Erik Menendez in front of his jury only. Which matters did you want to discuss?
Well, mainly the VPC issue, and I wanted the burglary issue. And to take the easier one first. What I have indicated to Mr. Kuriyama with respect to the burglaries is that, assuming we can locate it, all I intended to do was to read back to my client the stipulation and ask him one question, which is, who was the friend that was with him on the list theft? And our position would be, if that's all I do with respect to the burglaries, the people should not be permitted to go beyond that stipulation in cross-examination.
And what did you want me to do?
I wanted you to tell me for a change that I was right.
As far as the burglaries are concerned, it really depends on what happens during the cross-examination, not just what you specifically ask about it, but other areas that might be appropriate areas of inquiry that might bring it up and might open it up to other aspects of it. I really don't know yet what will happen in that regard. I can't tell you that because you ask one question or two questions that will foreclose the prosecution from exploring the matter in some other way. That's unrealistic to make such a request, because the burglary issue was put before the jury for various reasons, and if those reasons or others become the subject of cross-examination, and depending on the answers given, might open up the area to some other inquiry. I can't prejudge that at this point.
My point is, though, that right now, let's say, based on the record so far of my client's testimony, and with the addition of that one question, I don't see that the people have a right to go into the facts and circumstances
of the burglary. That's what I'm concerned about, not that he was involved with it, not even that he was referred to Dr. Azil because of it, because that was the specific purpose for which it came in, and Dr. Azil testified about that.
Well, also has to do with the relationship of parents and the defendant, and although it's been glossed over, the reason perhaps why the waivers were obtained from your client had to do with that therapeutic relationship relating to the burglaries. Various reasons that could come out.
That so far at least, in the prior sessions, what was actually discussed and whether or not what was told to the parents on that limited waiver had to do with the burglaries is not an issue, is not before the jury, and there's been no change in that. Dr. Azil testified about the waivers, and that didn't open up those sessions.
All right, just getting
But
back
just-
to your
just with
question.
respect to, can they ask him, I mean, we stipulated. so that
I already said that. I can't tell you until I hear what exactly is the subject of the inquiry on cross-examination. There are various aspects to it. At this point, the parties had agreed to stipulate to the underlying facts, and I don't know if the prosecution even intended to go beyond that as far as the facts were concerned.
Yes, Your Honor. We stipulated as we stood in our case in chief. The defense has put on many witnesses. The defendant himself testified that in September his father had indicated to him that he wrote him out of the will. In September.
Okay, again, I don't want to get into the details of it now. I don't think it's necessary or appropriate to preview the cross-examination to get to that point. It's part of a trial where questions are asked and answers are given, and we go from there. I don't think it's appropriate to, at this point, give you an ironclad guarantee as to what can and cannot be gone into until I hear the questions and the answers.
But can we at least have an agreement that if on cross-examination Mr. Curiano wants to start asking the facts and circumstances of the burglary, that he would approach first?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, that would be part of the discussions here, that prior to that arising, counsel will give notice and we'll discuss it.
If I might at this point, just refer.
I don't want to, if you have something to give me to look at, if that's what you're proposing to do, just give it to the clerk and I'll look at it. All right, the other issue deals with the movie or the videotape of the Billionaires Boys Club movie that is a subject of discussion. Counsel for the prosecution earlier had sought to have the entire videotape played for the jury at the close of the people's case in chief. The court overruled the people's request or denied the people's request, and since then the people have renewed that request, and in anticipation of this hearing the people provided the court with a copy of the videotape, and the court looked at it, and it's my understanding the defense has likewise looked at it. And what is it that the prosecution intends to do with this?
That we would be allowed to ask Erik Menendez specifically about the contents of the movie, and to ask him about his relationship to Brian Islamania, one of the brothers of the BBC member whose father was killed, as related in that movie. In addition to asking him specific questions about the movie, I suppose this would be more in rebuttal, that we'd be able to show the movie in its entirety.
All right, what is it that you wanted to ask him about the movie?
Ask him, first of all, if...
Not detailed questions, but just what areas did you want to ask about?
Whether it had anything to do with their thoughts of committing the murder on their father.
I mean, having seen the movie.
Yes.
And if he says no, then what did you want to do?
If he denies it, then I would intend to ask him questions about the similarities between what was done in the movie and what was done by the brothers in this case. To ask him his relationship to Brian Islamania, the son of the man the father killed in the movie. To ask him whether he has gotten visits from Brian Islamania. To ask him what he meant by his statements on November 29, 1989 regarding the BBC, starting some kind of company that would be near the BBC. and asked him about his plans and with regard to starting this company. On November 29th, he had indicated that he wanted to start this group of young men, as he indicated, Craig Signorelli being one, Brian Esselina being another, along with two other of Erik Menendez's friends, in which he wanted to make millions of dollars. And he says on the tape that he wanted to get a Rolex watch, blue that faded into black, so that would set them apart from other people. And he even made the statement that he wouldn't want to betray that group, meaning his new group that he would form, which would mirror, in my opinion, the BBC, the Billionaire Boys Club. So I'd ask him those questions in order to show that he's lying about having seen the Billionaire Boys Club. And when Dr. Ozio related that they had indicated to him on October 31st, 1989, that they had seen a BBC special, a movie on the BBC, and that gave them the idea to kill their own father, because that father in the movie was depicted as being similar to their father, in as much as the brothers indicated that they hated the father. The father, similar to Jose Menendez, the father in the movie, it had been indicated had $30 million. Jose Menendez, as it appears, had $15 million. So the motive was hatred, and according to the movie and according to Erik and Lyle's statements to Dr. Ozio, the father in the movie was very similar, and they had a similar motive to kill their own father. And that led to the planning of the murder of their father, and I mean, it's highly relevant in as much as now they're claiming that they were acting in self-defense, and they're disclaiming that the movie played any part. Although he hasn't directly said it, he has said that there's many things in that Dr. Ozio testified to that he never told them. He hasn't specifically said, well, the BBC movie, I didn't tell him that. So I believe that I should be able to get into that in as much as Dr. Ozio has already testified to that.
The jury has already heard a stipulation in regards to the, strike that, it wasn't a stipulation, it was testimony of Detective Zoller in relationship to the movie with the title BBC, or a movie that was on the BBC. And the testimony primarily involved the generalization that the movie involved a son who himself was involved in the killing of his father, and that there was some, I believe, a motivation of hatred involved, if I'm not mistaken, in the testimony. And that's basically all that the jury has. Am I correct or incorrect in that?
Basically, the testimony was very limited. It was simply, as I recall, that the person in the movie was involved in the killing of his father. And I don't believe that there was hatred in that, as I recall. I can pull the...
All right. Well, that obviously is subject to verification based upon the transcript. But I do recall reference to the fact that a son was involved in the killing of his father. Having viewed the movie, however, the movie itself was a very long one. It's more than 94 minutes. It seemed like it was probably close to 4 hours or 3 hours or more, 3.5 hours.
The movie, because it came out on video by Live Entertainment, it was 94 minutes.
Well, this was a TV version that you gave to me, which apparently was much longer than that. And the bulk of the movie related to an incident involving another murder altogether. Somebody else was killed. And only towards the tail end of the movie was there any reference to the father of Mr. Islamania that you've been referring to. And that was a killing that was the result of a kidnapping of Mr. Islamania. He was placed in the trunk of a steamer trunk and placed in the back of a truck, and ultimately died, and apparently from suffocation or other causes related to his abduction. And the people involved in the prosecution were totally unrelated to Mr. Islamania, along with his son. But the primary characters in the drama that you propose to present here as an exhibit were people who were unrelated to the decedent, the victim. And only briefly is there even reference to the son of the person who was killed. And that reference, he was there for brief periods of time in certain scenes, and other times he was just referred to in some dialogue. But his relationship with his father and all those things was never developed. It was primarily a kidnap and ransom type situation or extortion situation that was the subject of that killing. And that's a far cry from what the people's theory is that occurred in this case. It's on trial here. And it's difficult to see how that tape could ever be played for the jury, number one. Number two, it's difficult to justify under Section 352 of the Evidence Code a detailed examination along the lines of what happened in that movie, other than the bare bones that somebody was killed and the killing was motivated for financial gain perhaps and or hatred, and the person that was killed was related to as a son of or the father of one of the persons accused. But to go into any other details would seem to me be confusing to the jury, consume a great deal of time, and wouldn't prove anything.
In the movie itself, the older brother talks about how the brothers hated their father. He gave the example of his younger brother being made by the father to put out a cigarette butt in his own palm. The killing in that case had to do with the father, Mr. Islamania, who was called Nobody in the movie, had $30 million. I think that is relevant in as much as Dr. Oziel has testified that the father reminded these defendants of the father depicted in that movie, and that's when he decided that they would kill their father. So I think that is relevant as well. Your Honor, with respect to the first killing, the Joe Hunt killing Ron Levin, I think the way that I argue that that is relevant is that Ron Levin, according to the movie, was shot in the back of the head and then shotgunned and put in a grave. The perpetrators of the Billionaire Boys Club indicated that they called it the perfect murder, that the mafia or the cartel could be blamed. In fact, Joe Hunt says in the movie, "We need an alibi. We were at the movies. We'll say we were at the movies." All of these things are mirrored in what these defendants did. By seeing that movie, they got these ideas. In addition, after the death of Mr. Islamania, the brother is heard, the older brother who conspired with the Billionaire Boys Club to kill the father for the $30 million, is heard to say that my father was a political enemy of the Ayatollah. We know that Erik Menendez on November 29, 1989 claims that his father was an enemy of Castro and that Castro had sent some hitmen over to kill the father. That way they would be not suspected of the killings. The fact that Erik Menendez in November talks about making millions of dollars and starting a corporation that mirrors the Billionaire Boys Club, even admitting that, yes, this is like the BBC. And he had bought a Jeep, just as Joe Hunt drove in the Billionaire Boys Club movie. He had a Rolex watch, just as Joe Hunt had in the movie. All these things, I think, bring out Dr. Oziel's credibility that he has related, that these brothers told him.
Yeah, if Oziel had said all that, I'd agree with you, but he doesn't. He just said that basically there was reference to having seen this movie, and that gave them the idea. Without going into all the detail, and quite frankly, the way you describe it is much different than the way that movie plays out. You are extrapolating all sorts of facts afterwards and trying to relate them back to the movie rather than the other way around, and it makes interesting discussion. But under Section 352 of the Evidence Code, the court has to have some limits on the type of examination, and having viewed that movie, it's a far cry from what would be appropriate examination to go into the detail that you're proposing here. The fact that somebody in the movie had or did not have a Rolex watch, and that somehow is a significant issue that we should spend a lot of time on. You can look at any magazine and see an advertisement for Rolex watches and ask whether the defendant had viewed magazine advertisements. I don't see how that is probative of anything in this case. If he did discuss these matters afterwards with Mr. Signorelli, then that is a separate question. We're not talking about that at this point. We're just talking about the nature of the examination in regards to the movie. It could very well be that the examination would expand on what Detective Zoller has said about the movie in regards to whether the movie related to killing of a father. There was financial gain involved, whether there was hatred of the father, things of those sorts. But to get into all this minutia that you're now talking about is well beyond what would be probative and relevant in this case.
Your Honor, what I brought up at sidebar is the fact that questioning about the BBC should be conducted in front of both juries. And the reason for that is this morning.
Well, excuse me, I think our client should be here if we're going to talk about
All right.
admissibility
Yeah,
issues
we're not
affecting
talking
him.
about this.
Well, again, we're talking about the cross-examination, and at this point, we're just talking about the direct examination that Ms. Abramson wants to complete. I don't see how we have to get into all the details of what will be brought out on cross. Let me just hear briefly from the defense for Erik Menendez on what's been discussed so far. I don't want to consume much more time on this.
I just want to make sure I understand. I guess my questions are, will the people be permitted to mention Billionaire's Boys Club?
Yes,
Is there,
that's already been brought out before the juries in the testimony of Lyle Menendez.
in front of Lyle Menendez's jury, and I wasn't privy to the discussions that led to that. I mean, if this movie is as dissimilar, and it is, as the court says, then the title is meaningless, except that some of our jurors may know about the Billionaire's Boys Club movie and may make the kinds of linkages that would be improper to make based on the very scanty bits that Mr. Kuriama has brought out.
Well, the title is significant in that that's the title. That just happens to be the way it is. And I don't think there's this potential for confusion or contamination that you express.
All right. The second thing is, if my client says he's never seen the movie, then I would take it that people can't start questioning him about whether it's anything.
I don't know, because there might very well be other areas of inquiry that could relate to his knowledge of this matter.
Well,
And
that's
people aren't going to be
now
foreclosed from going into it, especially when the defendant talks about this on November the 29th.
He doesn't talk about the movie, Your Honor.
He talks about the Billionaires Boys Club, which would indicate that perhaps he has knowledge of this whole area.
This is what I want to get to. Now, first of all, on November 29th, it's Mr. Signorelli who says, just like the BBC. And my client says, yeah. That's
Okay.
the whole end of the discussion. But my point is this. My client may know about the criminal case and have never seen the movie.
Well, we'll find out when he's asked those questions. I don't want to preview this whole thing and give you an idea of your client answers a certain way, and then the result is that that's the end of the questioning. We'll just have to wait and see what the answers are.
Our position is this. The only relevance of this thing is whether or not my client saw it at the time that Dr. Oziel claims he was told he saw it, and whether if he saw it, it was the inspiration for this crime. Now, if in fact my client knew about the situation because he was friends with someone involved, that would impeach Dr. Oziel. Because what that would mean is if my client already knew about the Eslamina killing, if he knew a member of the Eslamina family, then he wouldn't need to see this movie, theoretically. I mean, under this notion of movie inspiration, to be inspired to do anything.
Not necessarily. That's not inconsistent to testimony of Dr. Oziel that having seen the movie prompted this activity.
In a logical sense, if he already knew the story years before.
Sure it does. Just because you know something doesn't mean that your mind can't be triggered onto a certain idea based upon which person's exposed to.
Well, our position, Your Honor, with respect to
This is that if this is going to be pursued in any way, we feel we're going to have to litigate then the issue of movies and other entertainments, such as music, and whether they are the inspiration or can be considered psychologically the motivators in crimes like this.
Why should we do that?
Because I think it's an absurd theory, but I think that there has been a great deal of research done in it now, and there are experts prepared to testify that people do not commit crimes based on seeing a movie, particularly one where they've already known the facts long before they saw the movie.
Well, the people are not offering this as a theory that because there was a movie out there that has some relationship to this case that they're entitled to introduce it. They're offering it a reference to it because the evidence is that your client referred to it. So this is not a situation, as you propose, that some psychological evidence is being introduced that because there are movies or plays or novels or whatever else out there that somehow that by itself causes somebody to commit a crime. But when the person says, I got the idea because I saw this, then that becomes relevant evidence in a particular case. And that's the specifics of this case.
If the person said that, if the person denies saying that, though, I think it changes it.
Well, then it's a question of fact.
Credibility.
No, it's still your client's credibility as well. It's a question of fact for the jury to decide as to who's telling the truth, as to whether it's Oziel or your client. And the people should have some latitude to explore this subject and to deal with it, and not to be bound by just a simple denial and nothing else. All right, is there anything else now before we proceed?
With respect to the specifics of this, Dr. Oziel testified that they mentioned the BBC special. They mentioned that movie, that the father in that movie mirrored what they intended to do to their own father. That's on page 11, it was mentioned on page 2. He said that during the television show, which dealt with the son murdering the father, that Erik and Lyle began to talk about how similar their father was to the father presented in the television show. Now, Dr. Oziel didn't know the specific show that they were referring to, and I think the fact that we have the Billionaire Boys Club movie shown less than 3 weeks before the murders, and it mirrors, I mean, there's so many similarities to what these defendants did in this case. It gives Dr. Oziel even more credibility because he didn't know about all these details. Yet, when we go to the movie that was shown, that was aired on NBC less than 3 weeks before the killings, it shows all these similarities between what these brothers did and what occurred in that movie. So I think under that theory, we should be able to get into at least, I know the court had indicated that there was hatred of the father and money was the motive, and the father perhaps was mean, and we can talk about the Billionaire Boys Club, but with respect to some of these items that I have related, the points of similarity, I think we should be able to ask about those.
At this point, my ruling is as I've announced it previously. All right, anything else now before we proceed? Anything else now before we proceed? All right, let's get the Erik Menendez jury out, please.
The new jury back in court, and they proceed with
Your examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, I want to turn your attention back to September of 1989. At that time, you received some insurance money, is that correct?
Yes.
What did you do with the money?
It went to my Aunt Martha.
Did you give it to her for herself, or was she supposed to do something
No, she
with
was
it?
going to hold it and keep it or invest it for me in some way. She's a stockbroker.
And were you to have access to any of that money?
Yes.
And what was the relationship, if you wanted to get something or buy something or do something, how would you go about doing it?
She gave me a checkbook and a credit card, and I would be allowed to, I guess, buy my daily necessities from that, or small things if anything large I was going to do that I guess I couldn't do through that, I would call her on the phone and she would send the money.
Had you ever managed money before?
No.
Had you maintained a checkbook?
No.
Had you had a credit card?
No.
Did you feel competent to do those things?
To manage it?
To manage the kind of money you got from the insurance?
You mean in terms of receipts or things like that?
I mean, did you feel competent to handle that money yourself, to invest it on your own?
No.
Now, the jury's heard testimony about this deposit receipt that was made on a condominium at the Marina City Club. You recall that testimony?
Yes.
You recall that was a day that you were there with your brother and with Noel Nedley?
Yes.
And who was Noel Nedley?
He eventually became my roommate that I lived with
And you lived with him where?
at the Marina City Club.
And you were renting at the time?
Yes.
And did Mr. Nedley contribute to the rent?
Yes.
And do you know where Mr. Nedley's mother lived?
She lived at the Marina City Club.
And why was it that you ever went to the Marina City Club for any purpose?
Because he wanted to live there. He thought it was the best place to live because his mother was right next door and she would be able to cook dinner for us or do things like that. And so he brought us over there to look for places.
Who's he?
Noel.
And did you know his mother?
Yes.
Now, were you attempting to purchase a condominium at the Marina City Club?
No.
Why did you write the deposit check?
Because I was loaning the money to Lyle. Lyle either didn't have his checkbook or I don't remember the details, but I had called my Aunt Martha to ask if I could give Lyle this money and turn it over and how it would work out with the money in the account, because if I was going to do something that large, I had to call her. So I did, and I loaned him the money.
Did you know what the balance in your account was that day before you wrote the check?
No.
Tell us, Mr. Menendez, your recollection of how the purchase of the Rolex watches occurred.
It occurred when I was getting a jacket to wear to the funeral.
Okay, were you getting a jacket in the jewelry store?
No, we were waiting for it to get, I guess it was a little bit too big in the sleeves, or maybe around the waist, I'm not quite sure. I didn't have a jacket to wear, so we were waiting.
Okay. Where was the jacket purchased?
At Bullock's.
And it needed to be altered?
Yes.
And was it going to be altered right then, or was it going to be altered a few days later?
No, right then.
So you were waiting for the alteration?
We were waiting, and as we were waiting, we went into different stores.
So did you go into stores other than the jewelry store?
Yes, we went into many different stores.
And was there any discussion before the jewelry store about buying anything?
No.
And do you recall whose idea it was to go to the jewelry store?
I don't know if it was anyone's idea. It was just one of the stores that we went into. We had a while to wait, so we went to the jewelry store.
Now, was this at the Century City Mall?
Yes.
And is the jewelry store on the same side of the mall as Bullock's?
I have no idea.
You don't remember?
I don't even remember the jewelry store. I don't really have a very good recollection. I just remember we were going into a lot of different stores.
What do you mean you don't remember the jewelry store?
I remember that we bought watches there, but I don't remember the actual store.
You don't remember what it looks like?
I don't remember what it looks like. I didn't remember the lady that came in that I guess we bought them from. I don't have a good recollection of it.
So do you remember the transaction?
I remember part of the transaction, at least I remember the remembrance of it. I talked to Detective Zoller about it on the 17th.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Do you have any recollection of picking out any watches?
No.
Yourself?
No.
Do you have any recollection of wanting a Rolex watch before you were inside the jewelry store?
No, I hadn't thought about it.
And what happened to, you wound up with what kind?
I wound up with the silver one. Lyle asked me.
Was it silver or was it stainless steel, do you know?
It was stainless steel.
Lyle asked you what you wanted?
Yeah, we were in the store, and he was looking at the different watches, and I know it's something that Lyle liked. He liked watches. He'd always wanted a watch, and so as he was looking at them, I said, "Why don't you buy one?" And he did.
He bought two, actually.
Yes, he bought two.
And what happened to the stainless steel one that you got?
I lost it in some way, somewhere, somehow.
You don't know?
No, I don't know exactly how. It disappeared one day
From where?
from my apartment.
Your apartment in the Marina City Club?
Yes.
And do you remember how long you had it before it disappeared?
3 months, 2 months.
Did this disappear like your diaries disappeared?
Yes.
Magic?
I didn't think it was magic.
You thought someone took it, didn't you?
Yes.
Objection sustained, the answer stricken.
Did you think someone took it?
Yes.
Now, the jury's heard testimony about furniture that you purchased. Did anybody assist you in selecting that furniture?
Yes.
And who was that?
My Aunt Martha.
They've heard about a car that you bought. Did anybody assist you in shopping for that car and buying it?
Yes.
And who was that?
Steve Goldberg.
And were you seeking advice on what to buy and what to do with money from various adults?
Well, with the...
Objection sustained, the answer stricken.
Were you seeking advice from adults?
Yes.
Advice with regard to what?
Advice with regard to what to do with all this money. Whether it should just sit in a bank. I didn't know really... I never really handled money like that before, so I didn't know what to do with it.
What about advice concerning purchases? Were you seeking that kind of advice from anyone?
Objection, Rudy.
Overruled.
Not about the Jeep, but about what to do with the money. Steve suggested that I purchase real estate.
But what about
And Martha
the Jeep?
wanted me to invest it in stocks.
Why did you have a lawyer with you to buy a Jeep, Mr. Menendez?
Because I'd never bought a car. I didn't know how to really go buy a car. I wasn't a good negotiator. I didn't... Steve was a friend of mine, so he came over to really do it for me.
He was the lawyer for the probate estate, wasn't he?
Yes.
Now, you said you were receiving advice concerning purchasing real estate?
Yeah, that was what Steve suggested, that I purchase real estate.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Was anyone else giving you advice about purchasing real estate?
Yes.
Who was that?
My cousin Henry.
Did you ever purchase real estate?
No. Actually, there was someone else, too.
Someone else to what?
That was giving me advice about the real estate.
Who else?
My Uncle Brian.
And what was your Uncle Brian's occupation?
He was a real estate developer, so that's what he really wanted me to go into.
And did you have discussions with him about the future and investment?
Yes.
Was there any discussion about, well, what were the discussions? Was there any discussion about him being involved in any way?
Well, yeah. He wanted to do it with me, and he said this is the best thing to go into. And I said, I don't know anything about it. And he said I know everything about it, so he thought it was a great idea.
He said who knew everything about it?
He knew everything about it. That's what he does for a living, so.
Okay. Let me show you, I want to return to a photograph that's been up before. You marked this photograph, which is of the bed in your bedroom, correct? This is 258?
Yes.
Did you buy something for this bed after you moved into the Marina City Club?
Yes.
May I inquire what's next door?
275.
Thank you, Mary. Let me show you this document, this receipt. This is W.B. Shed Bed Designs. Do you recognize that receipt, Mr. Menendez?
Yes.
And what did you purchase on that receipt?
3 padded bumper guards.
3 padded bumpers?
Yes.
For what?
For the edges of the bed. I wasn't allowed to purchase those before, so when I moved in.
Could you wait for a question?
Sure.
What's the date on the receipt?
11/30/89.
And how much did the 3 bumper pads cost?
$74.49.
And they were to go over what part of the bed?
The wooden edges of the bed, it had 3 sides, and they were supposed to go over those.
And how long had you had that bed before your parents died?
Almost 3 years.
And did you have some kind of problem with the edges of the bed?
Yes.
And what were the edges of the bed like?
They were very sharp, very hard edges, not round edges. They were cut and sharp.
Now, you're pointing to a side of the witness box. Were they like the edges on the side of the witness box?
No, not at all. These are rounded so that they're not sharp. The other ones were pointed.
And was there some reason why it was a problem to you that the edges of the bed were sharp and not rounded?
When I was living with my parents, yes.
And what was the reason that was a problem?
Because I'd have to kneel on the edge of the bed during sometimes the mirror and during sex.
And who made you kneel on the edges of the bed?
My father.
And would that hurt?
Yes.
And had you, why didn't you have these bumper pads for the bed while you were living with your parents?
He didn't want me to have the bumper pads on the edge of the bed.
How did you know he didn't want you to?
Because I said that the bed is supposed to have bumper pads, and he said I don't want them to have bumper pads.
Had you asked for them?
Yes.
Who did you ask?
My father.
Did you ever discuss it with your mother?
I discussed it with my mother after I discussed it with my father.
What did you discuss with your mother?
The fact that the bed was supposed to have bumper pads because for that reason it was sharp edges. And she said, ask your father.
Now, the jury's also heard testimony that you had a contract with Mr. Heffernan to play tennis, for him to coach you rather full-time.
Yes.
And when did you decide to play tennis full-time and to train and to hire a coach?
In late October, I believe.
Now, were you scheduled, you've testified you were supposed to go to college that fall.
Yes, I was.
And why didn't you just go to college?
I didn't think I'd be able to. I tried to go to Princeton to be with Lyle, and once I found out I was going to have to be in a different college, and even college altogether, I didn't think I'd be able to do it right away. I was having a lot of trouble concentrating. I was in a lot of bad states, and I figured I would try to wait a year.
Did you think you could get through college on your own?
No.
Who would be missing?
My parents.
And what was your expectation about your parents when you went to college?
That they were going to help me and pretty much do a lot of the work.
Had they always done that?
Yes.
Did you think you could get through college without them?
Some colleges, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get to UCLA, though.
Now, you said that it was a major problem. I mean, it was the sort of triggering event when your father told you you'd have to come home
Objection, leading.
some
Sustained.
nights. This has already been testified to, Your Honor.
Well, just ask a different way.
Do you recall your testimony that your father told you that you'd have to come home to and stay home
Yes.
while you were in college? You know, you just testified you expected them to help you with your work.
Objection, that misstates the evidence.
Regarding staying home, yes, objection sustained.
When your father said you'd have to be home at night, what did you understand that to mean?
I understand.
Misstates the evidence.
Why don't you rephrase the question?
You recall the conversation that you had with your father just before he left on his business trip?
Yes.
What did he tell you about coming home from UCLA?
He said that I was going to have to be home to study and work, and that I was going to have to sleep there several nights a week.
And had that been your expectation before, that you'd have to sleep there?
No, definitely not.
Was it? Did you have expectations, though, about going up and back from the school to your home?
Yes.
Had you, in fact, had your parents purchased something for you to allow you to go up and back?
A moped.
And did you get that when?
I got that at graduation.
So, did you expect to spend time at home, even though you were attending UCLA?
Yeah, I figured that college was the type of atmosphere where you had a lot of days off, time in between classes, and so I thought I would be having lunch or doing the laundry at home and things like that.
Did you have any expectation, though, of having to sleep at home?
No, I definitely was not planning on doing. I didn't even really want to be home at night, but definitely didn't want to sleep there.
Now, with respect to this decision to play tennis, you said you were having trouble concentrating. That was one of the reasons you couldn't go to college?
Yes.
What did you think tennis would do?
I thought tennis was something I always did to relax, to get my mind off things, and although I had trouble sometimes, it was sort of soothing for me, and it was the only thing I really knew how to do well, and so I just decided that Mark was a good friend of mine and to try out tennis.
Mark, you mean Heffernan?
Yes, he was my coach.
Okay, you said he was your friend. He was your coach, wasn't he?
Yes.
And after you made this arrangement with Mr. Heffernan, what was your schedule like?
My schedule was from 8 in the morning.
Come forward with it.
It was from 8 in the morning until, at first it was till 5 at night, and then it went from 8 till 7.
And that was training with him?
Yes.
He was with you all that time?
Yes, all day.
Did you do anything when he wasn't with you?
Did I do anything when he wasn't with me?
Yeah, with respect to tennis or training.
No, he was with me from 8 till 5 or 8 till 7 eventually.
And then what'd you do with the rest of your time?
I didn't have much time else. I ate dinner, and my roommate was there, and pretty much went to sleep around 10:30.
Now, I want to go back with you, if we can, till the end of August of 1989. Do you remember you were in New Jersey for the funeral?
Yes.
And were you planning to go back to Los Angeles in any event after the funeral, or were you planning on staying in New Jersey for some period of time?
I really had no plans. I didn't think one day to the next, really. I didn't know what was going to happen when. I mean, I knew I had one thing to do in New Jersey, which was about the computer, but...
I don't. It's one thing to do in New Jersey.
I mean, in California. But, you know, I didn't have plans for things.
I want to go back before that you knew about this computer thing, Mr. Menendez. When you left California to go to New Jersey, what was your purpose in going to New Jersey?
For the funeral.
And what was your plan at that time about coming back?
I had no plans.
So you didn't know when you'd be back to California?
I didn't have any need to go back to California. I didn't have any need to stay in New Jersey. I didn't have plans.
So you didn't have any idea when you'd be coming back to California, is that right?
Yes.
Now, when you were in New Jersey, did something come up that led you to come back to California?
Yes.
And what was it?
Carlos Menendez telling me about the computer.
Had you had a discussion with another member of your family before you talked to Carlos Menendez about the computer?
I'm not sure. I'm not really sure how it all got started. I know I was talking to Eileen and Carlos Menendez at the same time, but...
Before you left California, did you know anything at all about anything of significance having to do with the computer?
No, I knew nothing.
So what's the first thing that you heard when you were in New Jersey about the computer?
Carlos Menendez telling me he wanted to get into the computer.
And did he tell you why?
Yes, there were some files on the computer that he wanted to look into.
And that was the first information you had about it?
Objection, reading.
Sustained.
Was that the first information you had about it?
Yes, that was
Say
the
yes to time also.
Overall.
that was the first information. It was at the reception.
And do you know what day that was?
It was either the day or the day after when all the family got together in New Jersey. It was either the day or the day after the funeral. I don't remember.
Do you remember what day the funeral was on?
No.
Now, after Carlos Menendez told you he wanted to get into the computer, did you hear anything more about the computer from any other members of your family?
There was a lot of talk about the computer. I know my uncle Carlos Baralt knew about the computer, but Carlos wanted to get into it through me, and I said fine. I didn't have any plans to do anything either way. So I told him that that's fine, and I went to talk to Eileen.
What was it that he wanted to get into on the computer?
There were 3 files, Menendez, Will, and I think the last one was List. I don't remember now.
And what was his purpose? What did he tell you was his reason?
He wanted to find out if there was a will on the computer.
Carlos Menendez?
Yes.
Well, what did Carlos Baralt have to say about that, if anything? Did you talk to him about it?
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about it, and he said, because Carlos Menendez was bringing it up, and Carlos Baralt said, it doesn't matter, it's something in the order of, it doesn't matter if there's a will on the computer because somebody has to sign it, something like that.
Okay.
Carlos Baralt wasn't that interested. He didn't want to fly all the way back to California to find out what was in it, and
Yes, it's not being received for the truth of what was said, only to reflect the state of mind of the witness here.
Now, how did Eileen get involved in this?
I went to Eileen and asked her if she could help me out. I wasn't sure whether Carlos Menendez was going to do it with his. He didn't talk about him having a computer guy go and look into the computer. He just said he wanted to look into the computer.
So you
And
approached Eileen?
Yeah, because Eileen worked with IBM, which was the name of the computer, and so I figured she would know either how to get into the computer or knew somebody that might be able to get into the computer.
Now, did you have any interest in looking in this computer?
Yes.
And what was your interest in looking at the computer?
I thought there might be some writings of my mother's in the computer that I wanted to see.
Who used this computer in your family?
It was my mom's computer.
And why did you think there might be some writings of your mother's in it?
Because, in a letter that my Uncle Brian had found, she talked about the fact that there was, she had left letters, places, different things like that. I thought they might be suicide letters. I didn't know exactly what, but anything that my mom wrote at that time I wanted to find.
Your Uncle Brian had found a letter, a handwritten letter from your mother?
Yes.
And there was some reference in that letter to some other letters?
Yes.
Was there a reference to letters on the computer?
No, I think it was a reference to Lester Summerfield, her psychiatrist, but somebody checked. I think I asked my uncle to check with that man, and he said he didn't know anything about a letter, so I thought maybe my mom put letters other places. I wasn't sure, but anything on the computer with my mom's thoughts, I really wanted to see at that time.
Lester Summerfield was your mother's therapist?
Yes.
And are you saying someone checked with him to see if he had the letter?
That was my understanding.
I hadn't finished the question. To see if he had the letter that was referred to in the letter your Uncle Brian had?
Yes.
Why did you want to see your mother's writings?
Because I missed my mom a great deal, and I just wanted to see more who she was, because I realized that last week that I didn't know who she was, and I got angry with her at one point, and I just was feeling really bad, and I wanted to to find anything from my mom.
And did you tell that to your cousin Eileen?
Yes,
That's why you wanted to look?
yes.
Did you have any interest in whether or not there was a will on the computer?
My uncle Brault said that, Carlos said that there was no will on the computer.
My question was, did you have any
Objection
interest?
sustained. The answer is stricken.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you have any interest in whether there was or not at that point?
No.
So, was there some arrangement that was made, as far as you understood, with Eileen to provide someone?
Yes,
And then was there some change that you became aware of in the arrangements?
yes. Carlos Menendez had told me that he had talked to Eileen and canceled Eileen or something like that, and that actually it was Carlos Menendez's people that were going to go.
Okay. And did it matter to you whose people went?
No, I didn't care.
So was there some arrangement made for you to be at the house in Beverly Hills in order to meet a computer person?
Yes,
And did you return to California to do that?
yes.
Now, let me just fast forward for a minute here. How long did you stay in California that trip?
The trip back,
Yes.
maybe 10 days, not sure.
Now, did you have any discussion with your brother before you left New Jersey to come back to the house for the computer person about this computer business?
Yes.
And what was the discussion?
I had talked to him. I didn't know my brother didn't know anything about this. And so in a conversation, I guess it was 2 or 3 days before, I'm not sure, I'd mentioned that I guess he wanted to know where I was going to be at some point.
Just tell us what you said.
I'm
Okay.
trying to explain it. And
I'll ask
I
you.
mentioned that I was going to be going back to California for this computer thing, and that I wouldn't have been around at that time or something like that. And he said, "What computer thing?"
Okay, so did you told him what was about the arrangements that had been made?
Yes.
Okay. And did he tell you, well, I'm going to fly out there before you get there and do something?
No, he just said, "Oh, okay. I didn't know you were going to do that."
Did he tell you before he did it that he was going to come to California and do something on the computer?
No.
So when you flew to California, did you have any idea that your brother had already gotten here?
No, I had no idea.
And in fact, when you got to the house, did one of the security guards give you something?
They gave me a note
And who was the note from?
from my brother.
And could you tell if it was his handwriting or not?
No, it wasn't his handwriting.
And did that concern you?
That definitely concerned me.
Yes? Was that yes?
Yes.
Did the note, however, make reference to where your brother's whereabouts?
Objection, meeting.
What did the note say?
The note said that
Objection, hearsay.
Is it being offered for the truth of?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, it'll be received only to reflect the state of mind of the witness upon reading it.
Go ahead.
the note said that he had been there and that he had done something with the computer, and for me not to be concerned about that if the security guard mentioned that he was there or something in that order, and it was really surprising to me.
So did you try to reach him?
Yeah, I didn't know what this was. I mean, I figured that if he was going to leave me a note that he was there, he was going to write it in his own handwriting, and it wasn't. So I tried to reach him.
Did you believe then that he had been there at that point?
I wasn't sure.
Now, when you came back to California from New Jersey for this purpose, did someone pick you up at the airport?
Yes.
Who picked you up at the airport?
Objection, date against the time.
Overruled.
Casey Whalen.
And where did Casey Whalen take you?
He took me to the house.
And was Casey Whalen there when the computer person was working on the machine?
Yes.
Was Craig Signorelli also there?
No, Craig wasn't there.
You heard Craig Signorelli testify that he was there.
Yes.
Is that true?
No, he was lying.
Now, at some point in the future, did you tell Craig Signorelli about the computer and will files being or not being erased?
Yeah, I told him about it.
Now, is there any doubt in your mind, Mr. Menendez, as to which one of your friends was there that day?
No, Casey was definitely there.
Now, when was it that you learned that the something that was done to the computer, if ever, involved erasure?
When I saw the computer people at the house.
You mean Mr. Heyman?
Yes.
And how did seeing him there tell you that?
Well, he told me that the computer had been wiped, and that there was. I'm not sure. He said that the computer had been wiped, and I'm not sure what he said was there.
Okay.
I think he said nothing.
He said nothing was there?
Yeah.
Well, was he looking for something in particular? Do you know?
Yes, he was looking for anything under the files of Menendez will or list.
And when he said nothing was there, was he referring to the entire computer or to the files or what?
To the files. There was nothing under the files.
And ultimately, did you talk to your brother about this?
Yes.
And do you know how many days later it was that you talked to him about it?
It was either Sunday or the Monday after. I'm not sure. It was a few days later. I was trying to reach him all weekend.
This would be as convenient a place as any other.
Okay, we'll recess until 1:30. Again, don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 1:30.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, we were talking, I believe, about Craig Signorelli.
Yes.
Now, before September 1989, had Craig Signorelli ever been to your house in Beverly Hills?
Before September 1989, yes, once.
And do you remember when it was that he had been to the house in Beverly Hills before that?
I don't remember the exact date.
Was it in 1988, the year before?
I think it was in 1989. It may have been 1988. I don't remember. It was after the burglaries.
Well, you moved to Beverly Hills after the burglaries, correct?
Yes.
And you moved to Beverly Hills in October of 1988.
Yes.
And sometime after you moved there, did Craig Signorelli show up at your house in Beverly Hills?
Yes.
And was he with someone else?
As to that question, overruled.
Yes, he was with Steve Einbinder.
And do you recall what time of day or night it was that Mr. Signorelli and Mr. Einbinder showed up at your house?
I think it was sometime around 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Now, had there been some period of time before that day when you had not seen Mr. Signorelli at all?
Yes.
And do you know for how long a period of time?
I don't know how long the time it was because I don't remember exactly what time the incident was, but I hadn't seen him after September until that incident.
Had he been allowed at your home in Calabasas in the months before you moved?
No.
Now, with respect to the time he came to your house at night in Beverly Hills, what occurred?
He came to the house and with Steve, and I let him in. And the foyer was dark. The house was dark because it was late, I guess. I'm not sure why it was so dark. But anyway, I left in my dad's car, and Steve, Craig, and I went out.
Well, you left in your dad's car, and where were Steve and Craig?
I think Craig was sitting next to me, and Steve was in the seat right behind.
They were in the car with you?
Yes.
And you were planning to go out somewhere?
No, I just hadn't seen them in a while, so I was just was driving around.
Now, do you know if Ed Fenno was staying at your house then?
I don't remember.
Okay, what happened after you were out in your father's car with Mr. Signorelli and Mr. Aimbinder?
I got a phone call from my dad.
A phone call in the car?
Yeah, he had a car phone.
And, not for the truth, Your Honor, but what did your father say?
He told me to get back home.
And what did you do?
I went back home.
And what happened when you got back home?
My dad came out of the house and told Craig that if he ever came near his property again, he'd kill him.
And what kind of tone of voice did your father use when he said that?
I thought he was going to kill him. I mean, if he ever came back, he was very angry, very upset. He hated Craig and was really telling Craig never to come back to this house.
My question was, what was his tone? Was he quiet? Was he low? Was he loud?
He was loud. He was very close to yelling.
And what did Craig do?
Craig left with Steve.
They both left.
Yeah, Craig had driven.
And where did this, where was your father when he was making this statement to Mr. Signorelli?
He was right near the fence in the Beverly Hills house. He was right near the Sallyport fence area. Craig was going back to his car on the street.
You mean the carport?
Yes.
Sallyport is something you go through in jail, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
So he was outside?
Yes.
And where was Mr. Signorelli?
He was outside as well.
And were there other people outside besides yourself? Mr. Signorelli, Mr. Aimbinder, and your father?
Yes.
Who else?
Lyle was there. My mother was there. If Ed was there, then Ed was there. If he was staying in the house at that time. I don't remember. No, I think that was it.
Did Lyle have a friend named Tracy?
Yeah,
Was
he did
she
have a
there
Tracy. That's
that
right,
night?
Tracy was there. Whoever was at the house at that time came out of the house when my dad came out.
Okay. And did Mr. Signorelli ever return to that house while your parents were alive?
No, he did not.
Now, I think you've testified that you first saw Craig after your parents died, after you came back from New Jersey. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you said it was about a week after?
It was about a week after I got back from New Jersey.
Got back in order to attend to the will?
Yes.
In the computer issue?
Yes.
Now, had you talked to him before you saw him?
Yes.
And do you know, you talked to him on the phone?
Yes.
Do you know if you told him about what had happened with the computer and the erasures and all that stuff before you saw him or only when you saw him in person?
Objection called for reversal.
Overall.
I think only when I saw him in person. Before then, we were just on and off trying to get a hold of each other.
Well, had you talked to him?
Yes.
Okay, so you did get a hold of him?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yes.
So how long did you talk to him before you saw him? On the phone. You said you did talk to him on the phone before you saw him.
Yeah, not very long. I would talk to him for a few minutes, and I said I was busy this day or that day. I don't really remember the conversations that well.
Okay. Do you remember what day of the week it was when you actually saw him?
No. I'm not sure. Maybe a Thursday or a Friday. I'm not really sure. It was about a week after I got back.
And where did you see him?
At my house.
And how did you get there?
He drove.
How did you get there?
I was already there.
Now, were you staying at Casey Whalen's house when you got back from New Jersey?
Yes.
And did you stay there for some period of time?
Yes.
And during the day, when you were staying at Casey Whalen's house, what would you do?
I would usually go over to the Beverly Hills house.
And why would you do that?
I'm not really sure. I don't really remember.
Did you sleep at the Beverly Hills house?
No.
Were there security guards there during the day?
Yes.
At some point, Mr. Menendez, did your grandmother move out from New Jersey and take up residence in the house in Beverly Hills?
Yes.
And when she did that, did you live there with her for a while?
I stayed at the house a lot more with her there because I didn't want her to stay alone. So at some nights I slept there.
Had she come back yet, though, from New Jersey at this point in time?
I don't believe so.
Now, when Mr. Signorelli came by the Beverly Hills house, what did you do with him?
I talked to him.
And what did you talk about?
I talked about what happened with my parents.
And how did you do that?
I told him what had happened that night about me going to the movies and going to the Taste of LA and why I came back and what happened and what I saw when I got back.
And when you were telling him this, what you saw when you got back, what room of the house were you in?
I was in the den.
And when you were telling him what you saw, were you showing him anything?
I was showing him where my parents had died, and I was telling him what the room had looked like and how horrible of a scene it was.
And did you tell him anything else in the course of that explanation of what it looked like?
I told him that it looked like my mother was shot after she had died, and I told him it looked like... I told him what the room looked like, and then I told him what the police thought had happened.
And why did you tell him what the police thought had happened?
Because I knew that the police were wrong and what they were thinking happened, and I told him what I thought happened.
And what did you tell him you thought happened?
I told him that I didn't think that they were shot from the back doors. I thought that whoever shot them was somebody that they knew and came in through the front.
Let me ask you something. Who was saying that they were shot from the back doors?
My understanding was that the police had said that to the papers, because that's what the papers were saying.
Did you read that in the paper?
Yes.
And you thought that the police had said that to the reporter?
Yes.
And the back doors that... What back doors was the paper referring to, if you know?
They said they were shot from the back, and the den had doors from behind it. It had doors in 3 different areas, from the back, from the side, and from the front.
You've seen photographs here in this trial of the French doors, the ones that had glass and blinds, wooden blinds on them?
Yes.
And were those doors behind the couch?
Yes.
And are those the doors that you thought the media was saying were used to enter?
Yes.
Now, you said you knew your parents weren't shot from the back.
Yes.
And so what did you tell Mr. Signorelli?
I told him that I thought they came from the foyer. And
They being whom?
the people that my parents knew. I didn't specify who as of
Okay.
yet.
Do you mean the people who shot them?
Yes.
Okay. So you were telling him you thought the people who shot your parents came through the doors from the foyer.
Yes.
And that, in fact, is where the people who shot your parents came from.
Yes.
And what else did you tell him?
I told him that I thought it was someone that they knew, and I told him that it could have even been me. And,
Now, okay.
and then
Did you tell him anything else?
And then I told him that it was me.
Now, Mr. Menendez, do you know why you told this to Mr. Signorelli?
Yes.
Why?
Because I was trying to tell, I was hoping for an okay response. I was hoping for him to say that, no, you couldn't have done it, or no, you're too good of a person to do it, or something like that.
Why?
Because I thought it was such a horrible thing, I wanted to see what he thought about it.
Did you want to see what he thought about it or what he thought about you?
What he thought about me.
What did you think about you at that time?
I didn't like myself very much.
Now, after you told him it could have been you, it was you, did you tell him something else?
Yes.
What'd you tell him?
I told him that it wasn't me.
So you told him every possible version of whether it was or wasn't you?
Yeah, depending on the reaction I got from him. And when he said that he didn't believe it was me, I said, "You're right, it wasn't me."
Now, you heard Mr. Signorelli testify here to certain facts that he claims you told him in the course of telling him that it might have been you or that it was you.
Yes.
Was he truthful in testifying to those facts?
No.
For example, did you tell him that you walked outside and your brother was standing there holding 2 shotguns and said simply, "Let's do it"?
No, I never told him that.
Did you tell him you walked into the den and with no prior discussion at all, your brother says to you, "Shoot Mom," and you shot Mom?
No.
Now, did you have one discussion with Mr. Signorelli about what you had seen that night and the shooting of your parents, or did you have more than one?
I had one.
And did he stay over your house the night that you had this discussion?
No.
Now, when you were telling him what the room looked like where your parents were killed and what might have happened, how were you feeling?
I was feeling very, very sad. I was just remembering the scene.
And did Mr. Signorelli ever ask you any questions about what you had told him that day? Let me strike that question. Did he on that day ask you any questions at all about what you had told him, either about the way the room looked or how you were telling him it happened or anything like that?
No, he didn't say anything.
Now, did you at that time tell him about Lyle coming back and doing something to the computer?
Yeah, I told him all about the computer incident.
Okay. And did you indicate to him how you felt about what Lyle had done?
Yes.
And what did you tell him about how you felt about what Lyle had done?
Objection, hearsay.
It's not being offered for the truth, Your Honor.
What is it being offered for?
State of mind.
It'll be received for that purpose only.
Thank you, Your Honor.
How I felt about I told him that I was very upset with my brother.
And did you tell him why you were upset with your brother?
Yes.
And what did you say?
I said I was upset with my brother because he had wiped the computer before really finding out if there was any personal things from my mother.
Now, did you describe to Mr. Signorelli what some potential will that might have been in the computer might have contained?
No.
Did you have any reason whatsoever to believe that there was a will in the computer?
No, at that point, I definitely didn't think there was.
Did you see Mr. Signorelli again after that time that he was at your house?
I think so.
Did he ever stay at your house after your parents died?
No, he never slept over at my house.
Now, Mr. Menendez, do you have an independent recollection of your own as to what day it was that you came back from New Jersey to Los Angeles?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, what day was it?
It was the day that the computer people came to the house.
Okay. Do you have an independent recollection of the date?
No.
Now, you have made reference to the burglaries. I want to read to you part of the stipulation
that Mr. Kuriyama and I agreed to concerning that, okay?
Okay.
If I might, Your Honor. Regarding the Calabasas thefts, that between July 1st, 1988 and July 10th, 1988, Erik Menendez and a friend were at the home of another friend, John List Jr., whose parents were away on vacation. While searching for keys to a van, Erik and his friend found a piece of paper bearing a combination to the List family safe. Do you have that in mind, that stipulation?
I know of the stipulation.
Okay. Who was the friend that was with you at the List house?
Craig Signorelli.
And what was the reason, as far as you understood it, why your father hated Craig Signorelli?
Because Craig was involved with that with me.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, let me see counsel sidebar. Yeah, we're just going to take a short break so that we can clear the center section of the courtroom and get the other jury in, and then we'll start up with the cross-examination. So let's give it, let's make this our break for the day, because I've indicated to counsel, one of them has a need to leave at 4, so we'll break at 4 o'clock. So what we'll do is we'll start up around 2:30 and then go on until 4. So we'll take our afternoon break at this time. Don't discuss the case with anyone, don't form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 2:30.
Mr. Menendez, the first question asked by Mrs. Abramson was, where have you been living for the last 3.5 years? Isn't that right?
Yes, it was.
And you've been in the men's central jail?
Yeah, the LA County Jail.
Now, you and your brother killed your parents over 4 years ago, correct?
Yeah, over 4 years ago.
On August 20th, 1989, you and your brother, as your brother testified, burst into the family room of your Beverly Hills mansion. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you surprised your parents while they were watching television and blasted them until your pump shotguns were empty of ammunition, correct?
Objection, misstates the evidence.
Overall.
No, sir.
Did you burst into the family room?
Yes, we burst into the family room, but they weren't watching TV.
What were they doing?
They were standing when I saw them. They weren't watching TV.
Both of your parents were standing?
Yes.
Where were they standing?
Behind the coffee table in front of the couch.
Did you see them rising to their feet?
No, I couldn't see well in the room, but I never saw them rising.
Who was on the right and who was on the left?
Facing them,
Yes.
my dad was on the right, past the coffee table, and my mom was on the left.
Now, in direct examination, you've been saying that you saw 2 figures, correct?
Yes.
You knew it was your mother and father, isn't that right?
I knew it was my mother and father. I couldn't see their faces. I couldn't see exactly who they were until after they were dead, but I knew that it was them.
Was the television set on?
Yes.
Was there a light coming from the television set?
Yes.
So you saw who you were shooting,
Well, I knew it was my parents.
and in particular, you knew you were shooting at your mother.
I don't even remember. I don't think so.
You don't think that you knew you were shooting at your mother?
When I was shooting, I wasn't thinking at who I was shooting at.
Where did you aim your gun?
Just right in front of me as soon as I walked in the room. And I wasn't thinking this person's here, this person's there. Whoever was in the room, wherever they were, I was shooting at.
Were you closing your eyes when you were shooting?
No.
You were looking at what you were shooting at.
I suppose.
Now, you've testified here that as a youngster, you walked in your sleep. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I did many times.
Are you telling these juries that you were sleepwalking when you shot your parents?
No, I was awake. It's just that as soon as I went into the room, the gun went off and there was fire, there was smoke, and I didn't. It was so chaotic that I just didn't. I don't have a great memory of it.
Now, you entered the room first, correct?
Yes.
Now, you say the gun went off. Did you fire that gun?
No, I fired the gun.
Now, you shot until your gun was no longer loaded,
I
correct?
shot everything I had.
And then, what did you hear or see after you had finished firing all of your ammunition?
I heard a noise coming from what was my mom.
Now, you've described noises in direct examination. Did you describe for these jurors the noise that you heard coming from your mother?
I don't even remember what the noise was. I know that I heard it because I ran out of the room just to get away from there. But I can't even tell you what it was.
Did you describe to Dr. Oziel that it was moaning coming from your mother as she was trying to crawl?
No, I never said that. I read that in his notes. I did tell him she was trying to crawl. I found that out from my brother afterwards when I talked about it. But I didn't see anyone crawling in that room.
Would you describe for the jury what sound you heard? How would you characterize that sound?
Overall.
I guess I would characterize it as a moaning simply because she was dying, and that's what freaked me out, and I just wanted to get away. But I can't remember how it was or the way it was.
Was your mother crying?
No, it wasn't a crying sound.
You indicated that your father said no as you entered and started to shoot.
Yes.
Did your mother ever say anything?
No, she never said a word.
She didn't have a chance to say anything?
I guess not.
Now, you said that you were freaked out when you heard this noise, this moan from your mother.
Yes.
Is that right? And you're so freaked out that you went to your car and you had the ammunition box and you're pulling out ammunition so that when your brother came, you handed him ammunition. Isn't that right?
No, that's not why I ran to the car. As soon as that happened, I just got out of there and I just ran, and I ran out toward the car. And as soon as Lyle got there, then we started scrambling for shells.
As soon as Lyle got there, didn't he testify that you handed him a cartridge?
I did.
So you had been in the car and you're pulling out ammunition when you got to the car. You got to the car first, correct?
We got there at basically the same time.
So you went directly for the ammunition, didn't you?
No, that's not what I was thinking. As soon as I ran out of the room, I just ran, and I can't answer your question. I can't answer the thoughts that were going through my mind at that time.
Where was the ammunition located in your car?
The ammunition was in the trunk of the car.
The trunk?
Yes.
So you went to the trunk of the car and opened up the trunk?
No, the trunk was already open.
You had left it open?
Yes.
And you went to the back of the car and you went to get the ammunition and you handed the ammunition to your brother?
At that point, I definitely was scrambling around for shells and handing it to my brother.
Why?
Because I knew that he was going to go back in the room.
You left the room first, correct?
I guess so, yes.
And you took your gun with you?
Yes.
How would you know that your brother would return to put the coup de grace onto your mother?
Rephrase the question.
I didn't know what my brother would...
Rephrase the question, please.
How did you know, as you ran out of that room after you heard your mother moan and apparently try to crawl, how did you know that Lyle, your brother, would return to finish killing her off?
Overall.
I didn't see her crawling. When I left that room, I just wanted to get out of there, and I ran outside. And when Lyle came, that's when we went to the back of the car. And at that point, I knew what was going to happen.
Without any words spoken, you knew that your brother...
There were no words spoken.
There were no words spoken.
No.
And you were in there, in the trunk of your car, getting the ammunition already, correct?
Already when?
Before Lyle arrived at your car.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So you were standing there doing what?
Lyle was right behind me. It wasn't as if I stood at the car and then he showed up. He was right there. And at that point, we just went to the back of the car and I knew what was going to happen.
You just instinctively knew that your brother would return to finish killing your mother?
Yes.
And so you went into the trunk first and pulled out the ammunition
Yes.
and handed how many rounds to your brother?
1.
Why only one?
I think because as soon as I handed him, I was scrambling. The shells and everything was all over the place. And as soon as I picked one, I gave it to my brother, and he just ran in. I guess if he would have stood there and asked for more, I would have given him more. I don't remember the feelings that I was feeling right then.
So after you handed him one cartridge, were you searching for others?
I don't think so. He just started running in.
And did you then follow him?
Not at first, but I soon followed him.
And you heard the final shot?
Yes.
And you were at the door of the den at that point?
I was coming toward the den. I didn't want to go into the den.
Did you look inside the room?
I don't remember.
You don't recall that?
I don't recall that. I remember hearing the shot. I remember being in the foyer. I don't recall seeing into the den.
After you heard the shot, what did you see or hear?
Lyle coming out of the den.
Did he have his rifle, his shotgun with him?
No.
Now, you've heard the coroner describe 10 areas of wounds to your mother and 6 to your father, correct?
Yes.
Now, you and your brother were deadly accurate with your shotguns that night, weren't you, for not being able to see very well?
Overall.
I have no idea.
Did you see your mother move at all after you started to shoot at her?
I didn't see anything after that.
You saw nothing?
I saw nothing. I saw the fire of my gun and this stuff coming out of it, and I did not see anything. I mean, I guess that's why shots just went all over the place, out the window, on the side. I just didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where I was firing, or I really wasn't aware.
Mr. Menendez, there were only 2 shots that missed. You heard the testimony about the 2 panes being broken? And the French
Yes.
doors behind where your mother and father were seated?
Yes.
So there are 2 misses out of all the shots that you and your brother fired.
Apparently.
Yeah, phrase it as a question, please. It is a question.
Is it your understanding that there were only 2 misses?
Apparently.
I'm going to object to the form of question.
Overall.
Were your parents disabled after the initial shots? That were they stationary targets for you?
Object to the form of question.
Overall.
I have no idea. I just started firing as soon as I came into that room, and whoever was in that room, I was going to fire at. And I didn't think this is who this is, or who this is, who this is, and I just started firing, and apparently I was mostly shooting at my mom. I didn't know. I wasn't aware. I wasn't thinking about it. All I was thinking is, I gotta fire every shot with my gun.
You weren't arrested for your crimes for nearly 7 months, were you?
Yeah, I guess it was that much amount of time.
You and your brother nearly got away with it, didn't you?
No, I didn't think we'd get away with it from the second it was done. I thought we'd be arrested that night. I was actually surprised.
You never turned yourself in the 7 months that you were free on the streets, knowing that you had killed your parents, correct?
No, I never turned myself in.
In fact, you conspired with your brother to lie at every bend and turn, to the police, to your relatives, to newspaper people, to everybody, correct?
Object to the form of the question.
Rephrase the question, please.
You conspired with your brother, did you not, to lie to people about your involvement in the killings of your parents?
Object to the form of the question.
Overruled.
No. It was very clear that we wanted to lie to the police because at that point that night we didn't want to get arrested, and so we were scrambling around to find a reasonable enough explanation of where we could have been. But after that, we never talked about it. We never talked about what we'd say to to my relatives or to anyone else.
So after the first day, you conspired to lie to the police.
Of that word.
Overall.
What? It'd be easier. What do you mean by conspired?
You talked to your brother, you agreed that you and he would lie to the police.
Yes.
And after that, did you have any other discussions about lying to anybody, about what you did?
No, we didn't. We didn't discuss it. I mean, he just, I guess, assumed that I would not tell anyone that I did this.
After that, it came naturally.
No, it didn't come naturally at all. I tried to tell Craig. I told Dr. Oziel. I tried to tell another cousin of mine. It actually was very difficult around my relatives. But to anyone else, I certainly wasn't going to tell.
You lied to your relatives, correct?
In a sense, I did.
And to I believe your brother testified that two nasty men from the LA Times came to interview you and your brother at the Calabasas house. Isn't that correct?
They weren't nasty. They got nasty during the interview because they thought we had done it. And we were trying to say we hadn't done it, and so they got nasty. But I don't know if they were nasty people.
Now, when you say they got nasty because they thought you did it?
They had some misinformation, and I was denying the misinformation, but I knew what they were getting at, and so they were beginning to get angry.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd like to finish.
No, let's move on to something else. After this.
Mr. Menendez, you testified that you thought your parents couldn't die and they looked like wax figures after you and your brother shot them, correct?
Yes.
Now, despite the auditory problems that you claim to have, you understand now that your mother and father are in fact dead and could never go out into the sunshine again. Do you understand that?
Objection, Your Honor, that's legendary.
Overall.
Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, I'm very clear about that.
Now, you have testified that since being in jail, you have only been in the sunshine 10 times. Isn't that right?
I'm not clear on the number. About 10 times, very few times.
And you testified to that on direct examination, correct?
Yes.
Did you want the juries to feel sorry for you that you couldn't go out into the sunshine?
No, not at all.
Now, you and your brother have made many statements about how bad your parents were. That'd be fair to say?
I would.
Overall.
I would say I said a lot of things that happened to me and how I felt about them.
Now, because you and your brother killed them, they're not around to tell their side of the story, are they?
No.
Now, do you remember the testimony of your brother? He testified that he would lie for you. Do you recall that testimony?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony.
Reporter's transcript, 14,827, line 5.
Well, Your Honor, I don't-
Read it.
Very well, Ewan. This is volume 90, Tuesday, September 21st. Would you lie for your brother? I don't have to lie for him here. But did you lie in the past? I would lie for him. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, I believe he would.
Okay. Would you lie for your brother?
I lied for him many times in my life. My parents were the type of people that if you didn't lie, I could get him punished, and I
Would you
wasn't.
lie to help yourself?
I did a lot with my parents.
You did a lot of lying.
With my parents, I did a lot of lying.
You did a lot of lying with some other people too, didn't you?
With the police and people, yes.
And Mr. Menendez, you wanted to be an actor, didn't you?
No, not really. I wanted to be a tennis player.
Do you recall making a statement on November 29th, 1989, in which you stated that you wanted to be an actor? And that you told Craig Signorelli that once you got into acting, you'd bring him into acting as well?
If you let me see what I said, I could definitely tell you what I said.
First of all, do you recall making that statement?
I don't recall making the statement.
Or is it your testimony that you didn't want to be an actor?
I enjoyed acting, but
Okay.
that's not what I wanted to do.
In fact, you gave a performance to your high school class. You gave a soliloquy from Richard II, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you gave it to the entire class?
Yeah, I was going to do it in just my drama class until my English teacher found out about it, and she wanted me to do it in front of the entire class.
You enjoyed that, didn't you?
Not really. That was pretty embarrassing because it was just an embarrassing thing, but it was, I enjoyed drama class.
Did you cry in that?
No.
Now, you took a year of drama classes at Beverly Hills High School, correct?
Yes.
And did you win any awards or any recognition for your acting ability?
Definitely not.
Okay. Now, you were also an aspiring screenwriter, weren't you?
I like to write, and my dad was in that industry, and it seemed like an easy in, so I did, yes.
You're creative and clever in your writing. Would you agree with that?
That's not what they said, but
What do you think?
I thought I was.
Okay. Now, you ended up with a high enough GPA from high school, and you did well enough on the SAT to get into UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, and UC San Diego?
I got into all the UC schools. It may have been more than that, but it wasn't because of my GPA.
You take into consideration your SAT as well?
Your SAT, definitely my tennis, and the fact that I had put down that I wanted to do some. My major was like some very low major that would help you get into the school, and of course my father.
Now, you referred to, was that an essay that accompanied your application to the University of California campuses?
I don't understand. There was an essay you had to write. I didn't write it, but you had to write one.
You said that you had indicated that you wanted to take a certain course. Is that correct? To get into schools? You're interested?
No, you had to put down what major you want.
Okay.
Whether you want to be an economics major or a math major, and I put down like basket weaving. I put down the lowest, something to do with really minimal stuff that would, this is what my parents figured, that if I put down that I was Hispanic and that I wanted this major, and with my dad's connections, it would really help me out.
Now, the major you put down was basket weaving, is that what you said?
I don't remember the major I put down. I think it had to do with, I don't remember. I didn't fill out the form, so I don't know.
Could it have been undeclared?
It may have been undeclared. I don't know. I thought it was. I remember having a discussion with my mother that she wanted to put down the major that would best help me get into the school, since a lot of kids wanted to put down the real majors, history and so on, and she didn't want me to be competing with them.
Mr. Menendez, there's been talk or testimony in front of both juries about you having learning disabilities.
Yes.
Is that right? You got into all these UC campuses. You're a pretty smart fellow, aren't you?
That's not what I was told most of my life.
What do you think? Let's go to your state of mind, since we've been talking about that for a long time.
I'd always liked to think of myself as smart. I always wanted to think of myself as smart, but I just never was able to achieve in that way.
Is it your understanding that you must put your parents on trial in order to get the focus off of yourself and your brother in this case? Now, defense witnesses have characterized your mother as a bad housekeeper and that she took you and your brother late to school and practice. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And is that the way that you would characterize your mother? She was a messy housekeeper?
She had a lot of things on her mind, and she was in a lot of different places, sometimes not all there, and she had a really rough life, and she wasn't able to keep the house very well, and she was always in a hurry. It's just the way she was.
Now, you and your brother lived at the house as well, correct?
Yes.
Now, there's a photograph on that board up there. It's of your room. Does it show a messy room?
Yes, definitely very messy.
And your brother has testified that your car was very messy. It had dirty clothes in it, that sort of thing.
It was the second room for me, basically.
And Mr. Menendez, as to being late, your brother testified that, for example, he didn't like swimming, so he would intentionally try to delay your mother so that he wouldn't have to go by either taking his time or acting like he was sick or feigning some kind of an injury so that you would often be late. Isn't that right?
Lyle would do that?
Yes.
Oh, I did the same thing.
Right.
I guess he did it too. Yeah.
Okay. So you did the same thing, yet defense witnesses come in and blame it all on your mother for taking you late to places. Correct?
No, we were late to school, and for tennis mostly. For swimming, I guess we were late too. I assume we were, but I don't really remember being.
Would it be fair to say that you and your brother contributed to the messiness of the house?
Well, we live there.
And would you say that it would be fair to say that you and your brother caused your mother to take you late to school and to other activities?
No,
Because you
that
didn't
wouldn't
necessarily
be true.
want to go?
The former would be true about the messy house, but I hated being late. I could not stand walking into a classroom and having 15 heads turn to see who was coming in 10 minutes late, or walking onto the tennis court that way. So I hated that.
You testified that you would stall, so that would delay your mother.
I would stall for swimming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, remember the defense testimony of Mrs. Herx, that she said she saw your mother on August 1st, 1989, and she said that your mother said she was going to Quito, Peru to visit her relatives. Do you remember that testimony, sir?
Yeah.
And do you remember Mrs. Herx testified that she herself was born in Argentina and had heard of Quito, Peru before she said your mother told her that on this August 1st of 1989? Do you remember that testimony?
Yeah, I remember that testimony.
Okay, now you've testified, and we now know that in fact you had a national tournament in Kalamazoo, Michigan, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that you went early in August with your mother to Kalamazoo. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's true, but I found out later she also told other people that she was going to Quito, Peru. I'm not quite sure what's in Quito, Peru, but I don't know why she was saying that she was going to Quito, Peru.
Now, you in fact went to Kalamazoo, correct?
Yeah, we were headed to Kalamazoo August
And
3rd.
the relatives that she was supposed to visit in Quito, Peru, she didn't have any relatives in Quito, Peru, did she?
No, she did not.
In fact, she had relatives near Kalamazoo. Isn't that right?
No, she did not.
She had relatives in Oak Lawn, Illinois. Isn't that right?
In Chicago, yes.
Chicago. Which is how far? It's just southwest of Kalamazoo, isn't it?
I'm not sure. We would fly to Chicago, and then my Uncle Brian had a plane. He had one of those private planes, and he would fly us there. I think it was 100, 200 miles. I'm not even sure. May have been much more. I mean, it was in the same vicinity, the northwest.
So she in fact had relatives near Kalamazoo. In fact, you would go to see them in Chicago, and your uncle would fly you up to Kalamazoo.
Yes.
Correct? Remember the testimony of your cousin Diane Vandermolen when she was staying at your house, one of the many cousins that stayed at your house during the summers. And when you were, and this is in 1982, 1983, when you were 13 and your brother was 15, that Diane Vandermolen testified that she heard your mother say, "I've got to go help Lyle wash his hair." Do you remember that?
I heard that, yes.
Now, your mother told Diane Vandermolen that, correct?
Apparently, wasn't in the house.
Well, your mother wasn't trying to hide that fact that she was trying to help your brother wash his hair. Would that be fair to say?
Apparently not.
Okay.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Now, Mr. Menendez, your brother has testified that he started to lose his hair in his early teens. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
About the time that your mother was helping him to wash his hair? Is that right?
Well, if Diane was there, I was 11 and 12, so Lyle was 14 and 15.
Excuse me, objection, this calls for speculation.
Overall.
So your brother Lyle was about 14 or 15 during this period of time that Diane Vandermolen was there.
Yes.
Now, you heard your brother testify that your mother and father were concerned about his hair loss, correct?
I heard him testify about that, yes.
Okay. And your father was concerned about the hair loss as well, isn't that correct?
What Lyle said is that he
I'm
wanted...
going to object, Your Honor. I'm not sure what the questions were, for personal knowledge or...
Rephrase the question.
Yes. Do you recall sitting in this courtroom and hearing your brother testify that your father was concerned about his hair loss and talked about getting away?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the form of the question because it's irrelevant. We're going to give the
Overall.
Mr. Menendez, did you and your brother discuss taking your mother's assisting Lyle because of his hair loss and turning it into innuendo about your mother molesting him in this bathtub? You discussed that at all?
I don't understand what my mom molesting Lyle has to do with his hair loss.
Were you here when your brother testified that your mother would come in when he was taking a bath and molest him?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this supposedly started to occur.
states the evidence.
Overall.
This supposedly occurred based on what Diane Vandermolen had heard your mother say, that she was going to go help your brother wash his hair.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Was there any discussion between you and your brother that you would try to act like your mother was molesting your brother in the bathtub during this period of time?
When Diane was there?
Yes.
No, definitely not. I didn't even know my mother was doing that.
After you were arrested on the charges presently pending against you,
Yes.
did you discuss certain things that occurred in your childhood and say, well, we can use that and say, Mom molested us here? And do you follow what I'm saying?
No, after we were arrested, we had many discussions about the stuff that happened between Dad and I and whether or not we were actually going to bring that out. But definitely not about Mom in the bathtub with Lyle. No.
Now, do you recall testimony of Detective Zoller that no family letters or personal effects of your parents were taken from the Beverly Hills house? Is that correct?
Detective Zoller didn't take any?
Right.
No.
Object to the form of the question.
Overall.
Then, Mr. Menendez, you and your brother had access to all the family photographs that were accumulated over nearly 2 decades of your family.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this and ask for approach.
Overall.
Is that correct?
Yeah, we had access to everything before and after they died.
You've indicated that you wanted to get everything your mother ever wrote and collect those so you could see what she thought?
No, I never indicated that.
Did you testify to that just this morning?
No, what I was saying is that I thought she had something in the computer, and I desperately wanted to find out what was in the computer because of how sad I felt afterwards. I just wanted to know what was really going on with her, since I didn't understand her anymore.
Now, besides the computer, were there other writings belonging to your mother or generated by your mother?
I didn't know that, but I found that out later.
Did you know that your mother had a diary?
Yes,
How did you know that?
I found that diary.
Now, in fact, it was in your bedroom after the killings, correct?
Yes.
And you read that diary.
Yes, I did.
Do you know where it is, that diary is now?
I have no idea. I assume my grandmother has it. It was right after my grandmother came in, and she sort of took over and took possession of everything and sorted it out. And I tried to do some of it with her, but I didn't do that much with her.
Now, this diary of your mother, did it cover the last year of her life?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Actually, what the diary was, it was in a diary type of thing, but it was just a letter. It was in a little booklet, but it was just a letter from my mother to my father. It was a very sad letter.
Where is that?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask for approach.
Overall.
I have no idea where it is.
Now, this diary, let's get back to the diary for a minute. Did you see a diary that your mother wrote expressing her love for you and your brother that was comprised of about 50 to 75 pages?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Overall.
No, I definitely never saw a diary like that. When I was in In 1986, I saw a suicide letter from my mother to my father, in which she said that she loved us. That made me call Lyle and ask Lyle to please talk to Mom, because I didn't want her to kill herself. But I never saw a diary 50 to 70 pages.
Now, if there were a diary in your room several days after the killings...
Of 50 to 70 pages?
Yeah. Yes. How would that diary have gotten there, if you know?
Objection calls for speculation.
Would it,
Sustained.
Now, this diary that you testified you saw
Mhm.
after the killings, how many pages long was that?
It was a long letter. I'd say about 10, maybe 15 pages. It was a small book about this one. It had a rainbow and a unicorn on the front, and a little gold lock. And I always wanted to know where it was, but it had disappeared from my bedroom, so I didn't know where it was.
This diary disappeared from your bedroom?
Yeah, once my grandmother came into the house, she pretty much took most of the stuff.
When was it that you first saw the diary that you just testified about?
After my parents died.
How long after?
I think before I went back to New Jersey for the funeral, so within the first week.
You left for New Jersey either the 25th or the 26th of August, is that right?
Is the 26th Saturday? Yeah.
I believe so.
I left on Saturday.
So before the 26th, you had found this diary of your mother's, correct?
Yes, I had gone into my mother's room when all my relatives were there. Everyone was in the house. I had been in my dad's room and my mom's side and found the diary.
Okay, what day was that, if you recall?
I assume it was before I left to New Jersey, so Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, somewhere
Okay,
around.
well, Thursday, the 24th is the day that you bought the money clip and the Rolex. So let's take it from there. Was it before that or after that?
It might have been before. I really don't have a great recollection of what happened in the aftermath. I remember I was at the Bel Air Hotel, and I remember that there were a lot of relatives and that we were at the house, and a lot of things happened, but I don't remember an exact sequence.
Okay, you testified, though, that you found this diary, and did you bring it to your room so you could
I found
read
it, and I was crying because it was so sad, and I brought it to my room and just started reading it. It wasn't really a diary. It said "Dear Jose" at the top, and so it wasn't a diary, but it was in a diary type of book.
And did it talk about you and your brother and how much your mother loved you and your brother?
No, it didn't mention Lyle and I in that one.
At all?
Not at all.
So if there were such a diary, that wouldn't be the one that you saw?
Objection calls for
I don't know what diary you're...
Objection sustained, the answer's correct.
Mr. Menendez, was there any other diaries that you saw besides the one that you've described, this 10-page long diary with the rainbow on the front of it?
Was there any other diary? No,
Yes.
not that I saw. I'm sure she had tons of diaries. She probably had my diaries too. I didn't see them.
Now, if she had your diaries too, would those diaries have been in the house when she was killed?
Unless she destroyed them, yes.
Did you ever find those?
No, I didn't. I went into my father's room partly because I knew there were a lot of magazines and videos that I didn't want anyone to find. And I went into my mother's room just in case there was... Actually, what started me going into my mother's room was I found the tape recorder.
Okay, wait a minute. You talked about magazines and videos that you didn't want anyone to find?
Yes.
Of yours?
No, they were in my father's room. They were in a box, and they had a lot of magazines, gay magazines and gay pornos, and I removed them from the room because I knew the relatives were going to be around, and I thought they might be in there.
What did you do with those?
I put them in my closet.
Oh, so if they were found in your closet, you would have taken it from your dad's room and put it in your closet.
They weren't found in my closet. I gave them to my cousin Henry and to my cousin Andy, and told them to get rid of them. I didn't want my grandmother to find them. I didn't want my relatives to find them. I didn't want anyone to find them.
Mr. Menendez, have you had homosexual relations with anyone other than, as you've indicated, your brother?
Objection, Your Honor, to the form of the question. Objection to the subject matter and ask for the vote.
Okay.
Mr. Menendez, would it be fair to say that you've had access to hundreds of photographs of you and your brother and your parents taken of your family over 2 decades?
Objection, Vegas to time.
As to when did he have access, why don't you rephrase the question?
Yes. After the killings of your parents, did you have access to hundreds of family photographs?
After, before we were arrested?
Yes.
Yes.
So you control what photographs are shown to the jury?
No.
The ones that came from your house?
No.
Now, in addition, how many photographs would you say were at the house of the family over this period of time?
Which period?
After the killings, how many photographs did you see in your house in Beverly Hills?
Very few. My grandmother sort of took everything and took them back east to where she wanted to form albums and memorabilias and things like that.
Were there videotapes taken of you and your brother while you were growing up?
Yes.
And would you say that was pretty common?
Yeah, I would say it was pretty common. Mostly of tennis. In fact, almost all of tennis, but that was pretty common.
Now, out of these photographs that were at the house, that were accumulated over about 20 years, the defense has presented 2 photographs. One photograph that your brother said was of him in the bathtub, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And one of you with a blanket around you. Is that right? You had some kind of a bedspread or something on you?
How old was I?
Maybe you can tell me that.
Your Honor, I would, that mischaracterizes the photograph.
Objection sustained.
Do you remember a photograph shown of you?
You're referring to an exhibit here?
Yes.
Okay.
There was an exhibit.
Yeah, there were a few photographs up here of me.
And they came from a roll of film that was mostly of your birthday?
Oh, the ones on my 6th birthday? Yes, I remember those.
Okay. Now, did you ever take a picture of your brother? You ever use your parents' camera?
When they wanted me, I wasn't really supposed to use my parents' camera, but if there was a group and they wanted me to take a photo, I took a photo. I did that at church once. I remember doing it then and when we were playing tennis sometimes.
Did you ever get a picture taken of you by your brother when you were growing up?
Definitely not when I was naked.
You don't recall that?
No, that didn't happen. I would remember that.
When you would take a picture as a child, would it be a centered picture?
I didn't take pictures as a child. When I was 12, 13, when we moved to New Jersey, then as I got older, my parents would allow me to use the camera.
And you've testified before, I believe, these juries that you believed your father had taken many, many pictures of you naked, correct?
No,
Is that right?
Objection sustained.
Did you testify that your father had taken other photos of you?
Objection, Your Honor, he didn't testify to that at all.
That's a question. Your answer.
My father did take many photographs of me naked.
And do you know whether he took photographs of your brother naked?
I have no idea.
Now, your father and mother didn't know that they were going to be killed by you and your brother on August 20th, 1989, did they?
Probably not. I would guess not.
So they didn't have time to go and hide any photographs of the family, did they, before you killed them?
Cause for speculation.
Overruled.
It's also argumentative.
Overruled.
Is that right?
I don't think they were concerned about hiding photographs on August 20th. I think they had a lot of different things on their mind then.
Now, you said that you thought your mother could read minds, and you found out later that your mother taped your calls, correct?
I didn't know if she could read minds, but she seemed to have a lot of it seemed like magic. And I found out later she was taping my calls.
And in fact, didn't you tell Dr. Oziel that your mother locked her door, her bedroom door, about a week before because she sensed that you and your brother were going to kill them?
No, what I told Dr. Oziel is that everybody in the family locked the doors, and especially that last week. And when I said it, I didn't mean to say it. It slipped out.
It slipped out.
Yeah.
You didn't mean to tell him that your mother was locking her door?
I didn't mean to tell her that my mother, my brother, and I were locking our door because I figured he would ask why as soon as I said it, but he never did.
And in fact, on September 17th, you told Detective Zoller that your mother was locking her door recently too, didn't you? That wasn't a common thing. That was something that she had just started to do recently.
No,
isn't that right?
That was something that we were all doing recently, but had started as soon as we moved into the Beverly Hills house. Things changed. That we had never had a code on the house, and she fixed the code. She started locking every door in the house, and it just seemed. I thought something was going on. It seemed really eerie. I'm not sure what I told Detective Zoller on the 17th. If you have it.
If you had mentioned that your mother was locking her doors and then later mentioned it also to Dr. Oziel, would that have been something noteworthy that had just occurred, or was that something that had been occurring all along since you had lived in Beverly Hills?
I can't answer your question because I don't know what I said to
We'll
Detective
go
Zoller.
through that. What kinds of videos would be taken of you and your brother?
Mostly videos, playing tennis or whatever sports we were doing.
Was there ever any videos where you were given parties by your parents or at proms or dances or anything like that?
I don't remember any, but they very well could have.
And where would those be, with your grandmother?
At this point, I would have no idea.
The only moving picture that you've shown to the juries is, I believe, of you swimming like 15 years ago. Would that be fair? Is that?
Yeah, we have a lot more.
Yeah. You have some of your mother and you and your brother, or maybe your mother's smiling.
I'm going to object to the formal question. I'm going to object to this whole area of theft, master approach. Overall.
We have a lot of different videos that would show me playing tennis. We have different videos that would show, I guess, my mother smiling. We have a lot of different videos. My attorneys have told me about some of them.
Do you remember a defense witness testifying that over a period of 3 years he had never seen your mother smile once? Do you remember that?
No, I said that that's the one thing I wanted from my mother, was for her to smile, and that's my favorite thing about her.
So you saw your mother smile?
On this issue,
On that issue the court's not aware of.
relating to this question?
I'll go on to a different area, Your Honor.
No, not related to the question.
Okay, well, if he's going on to something else with
It
later.
has nothing to do with what is going on.
Okay, sure, you may have. There was a matter that council wanted to deal with, and it'll take a little while to do that. So, as I indicated, we were going to be recessing at 4 o'clock anyway. So I'll permit council the opportunity to use the 15 minutes to deal with that matter that they discussed. And we'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And both juries are to return at 9 o'clock tomorrow, at which time we'll resume. Don't discuss this case with anyone and don't form any final opinions about it, and don't permit yourselves to be exposed to anything about this case outside of the courtroom. We'll see you all back here tomorrow at 9 o'clock. All right, the jurors have left. Just regarding scheduling, I wanted to let council know that on Monday, we have one juror on the gold jury who will not be able to be here until 10 a.m., so we would start around 10 o'clock, unless we were just going with a blue jury. And also, on Monday, we have a member of the blue jury who has to leave for a medical appointment at 3 o'clock. So bear that in mind in relationship to the conduct of the trial on Monday. And I believe somebody mentioned something about wanting to talk about scheduling or something. Yes. I'm not going to talk about that now. We're not going to discuss that now. We're not going to discuss any other scheduling other than the immediate scheduling here. And any other matters that council wants to discuss.
Should we talk about the mention of the BBC in front of both juries?
If you like to, sure.
Yes. I believe that this morning, shortly after we began at 9:30, there was mention, Erik Menendez was asked in front of both juries, not using this word, but the genesis of discussions that he had during the week with his brother Lyle. And he told Dr. Oziel about conversations he had during the week between himself and Lyle. He didn't tell Dr. Oziel all of the contents of the conversations, and he just made reference to them. Because of these discussions, and I think the inference is to be drawn that Dr. Oziel was mistaken when he conveyed to the jury that they had discussed things before the killings. I think that the subject matter of the BBC should be broached in front of both juries. Now, originally the reason it was only in front of one jury is because of the 352 prejudice versus probative. But the Lyle Menendez jury has now already heard about it because he was questioned in front of his own jury about the topic of the BBC, and as the court recalls, he said he was aware of the special. So because of that and because of the conversation elicited on direct this morning, I think that Mr. Kuriyama's, at least his initial questions to Erik Menendez concerning the BBC is the origin for their scheme to kill their parents versus the way the defense is trying to portray it should be in front of both juries.
Did the defense for Lyle Menendez wish to be heard?
Well, just to indicate to the court that the evidence with respect to Erik Menendez is different and raises collateral issues which are the subject of evidence only in front of Erik Menendez. And it was my understanding that's why the court was keeping the examination separate on this issue, and I haven't heard anything which contradicts that rationale.
Well, further, there was in the initial discussions regarding Dr. Oziel's testimony a portion of his statement which related to, as I recall, both defendants discussing the movie, or at least it was discussed in the presence of both defendants with Dr. Oziel. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me there was such.
There is a portion of the November 2nd session which Dr. Oziel characterizes a BBC discussion as vague.
And that was ruled by the court to be admissible before both juries, as I recall,
but
at the time.
But it was never offered in
That's what I'm getting at. That at the time of the hearing relating to Dr. Oziel, prior to his testimony, that portion was ruled an area that could be gone into before both juries, and then it was again brought up prior to the cross-examination of Lyle Menendez. The defense objected to it prior to the people commencing cross-examination, and the prosecution never went into it during cross-examination. Yeah. No, as far as the conversation with Dr. Oziel. Not the BBC itself, but the conversation with Dr. Oziel on that subject.
Yes, I believe I did not ask him to discuss that.
And at this point, your proposal is that the prosecution be permitted to ask before both juries whether or not Erik Menendez saw that program?
Yes, and discussed it with Dr. Oziel on October 31st before his brother got there, because there's already been ample testimony in front of both juries about what occurred before his brother got there.
Well, I think I mentioned this before during earlier hearings in regards to the examination of each defendant before the other jury, that the subject matter itself could be brought out, whether or not there was such a movie and whether or not Erik Menendez saw it. To go into more about it at this point, I'd have to wait and see what the answers are. So as far as whether it would be a subject of further inquiry before the Lyle Menendez jury, I'd have to wait and see how that examination goes. But I already ruled that the nature of those questions could be asked before both juries. That was discussed way back when we discussed testimony of the defendants before the juries.
It was, but the fact that they didn't take advantage of that opportunity and allowed Lyle Menendez to go off the witness stand puts us at a distinct disadvantage.
No, this is a conversation that could not have been asked of Lyle Menendez because it was a conversation that occurred between Erik Menendez and Dr. Oziel before Lyle Menendez got there.
But there was a conversation about the BBC on November 2nd, and the people, for whatever reason, chose not to cross-examine Lyle Menendez about statements that he may have made to Dr. Oziel about the BBC. They didn't do it on direct. They didn't do it on cross, despite the court's ruling twice that they could. And now they seek to come in behind the examination of Lyle Menendez and to create an inference here which cannot effectively be rebutted without putting Lyle Menendez back on the stand. It's our position that's an unfair advantage of the order approved.
As I understand it, they intend to inquire regarding what occurred prior to Lyle Menendez getting there, what it was specifically that Erik Menendez told Dr. Oziel, and certainly that has been brought out both during the testimony of Lyle Menendez and the testimony of Erik Menendez as to the fact that Erik Menendez told his brother what he had told Dr. Oziel. So this is something that can be certainly questioned, and it's not going beyond the scope of the direct examination of Erik Menendez and this proper cross-examination of Erik Menendez. Yes.
Additional point, which is to the extent the court is pointing toward Erik Menendez's testimony as opening up the possibility of this examination. We didn't call Erik Menendez and objected to his testimony, and yet we're going to get stuck with his direct testimony as a basis for allowing this cross-examination. That
was discussed earlier as far as what could happen during the examination of a co-defendant, and really the subject at that point when we discussed it had to do with the right of confrontation and Miranda Bruton issues and whether or not such statements could be brought out during the cross-examination, and the court ruled that they could, that this is an area that is permitted under federal law and under the California law as followed by the California Supreme Court, and would be appropriate examination. And we've had the other discussions regarding whether a defendant could be called to testify before the other defendant's jury. Those discussions are on the record, and the rulings of the court and the reasonings for the ruling are all there for anyone to review. And my analysis remains the same.
Just one last point, Your Honor. With reference to the October 31st conversation with Erik Menendez outside the presence of Lyle Menendez, the notes of Dr. Oziel's session did not reflect any mention of the BBC. I think the only mention of the BBC is in the November 2nd session. And in the October 31st session, he refers to a movie. I don't think there's any reference to BBC at all. So it would be our argument that questions about the BBC and discussions about the BBC at this point would lack a basis in the facts and would be a bad faith attempt to get that in front of the jury when the discussion, in fact, if it took place at all, took place on November 2nd.
Are you saying that he didn't testify about that here in court regarding the October 31st session?
I'm not sure what his testimony is in that regard, I'm just referring to the notes. The notes of the session do not indicate any statement made on the 31st about the BBC.
Well, I recall the notes differently, and I also recall the testimony differently.
Your Honor, he also testified in front of the grand jury. There is a part in the notes where the tape went blank for approximately 8 seconds during when he was talking about the subject matter, but in front of the grand jury, he did testify that it was a BBC special, so that was brought out in December of '93.
All right, well, clearly, this is an area that the prosecution has a good faith basis to ask about, so I'll permit that. As far as where it goes, depends on where the answers are. Yes.
From launching to, I assume what he was going to do is confront my client with some statement that some reporter claims he...
Yes, the LA Times reporters had an objection to that.
Well, I don't know what the offer is. I'd like to know what
I mean, as far as the statements made,
what statement was made.
is there a specific quotation that you're referring to?
Your Honor, I wasn't going to get into that. I was referring to the statement by Lyle Menendez in his direct testimony that these LA Times reporters were mean and nasty to Erik Menendez, and I referred to that so that I could, it'll come up later in argument, actually. I didn't intend to get into what specifically was stated.
So you've gone over as much as you will in that area?
Yeah, that's all I intended to do at this point.
All right. Anything else now on any other
Yes, Your
subject?
Honor.
I do have cases, if I may, Mr. Clerk, on the issue that we discussed.
Yes.
Will you give it to us?
Yes.
Anything else?
Yes, in preparing jury instructions, I assume you want 2 sets, one for each jury. And in filling out the blanks, do we refer to the defendant in the singular or defendants, or I'm not quite sure how to do that.
Each jury is deciding the case as to one defendant, so it should be singular unless there is instructions that relate to conspiracy and things that would call for reference to more than one individual. But as I understand it from the defense schedule here, we're a fair distance away from jury instructions, although I want the jury instructions provided to the court. Now that both defendants have testified, the defense is in a position to provide those to the court, and as well as the prosecution. That's what was holding up the defense, that you wanted to wait until the defendants testified before producing your jury instructions. So I assume there are no other barriers to doing that.
No other barriers except the testimony of the experts may answer this as well.
Okay, well, I assume you know what you expect that
And
they'll
we
say.
are working on the instructions. We'll provide those to the court
Okay.
as soon as possible.
All right, anything else? Okay, we'll be in recess until tomorrow at 9 o'clock.